Very cool. Very nice professional intro, of course. Back today with some more gripes. Name of the show is Everything's Bad. Welcome back. As with me always, save Sheik Jara now, Adam, my friend. Also with us most of the time, Angie Batar, who I love. Nice to see you. And today we've got somebody who's actually in Beirut, and we have Mira. How's it going, everybody?
Whew. Well, how are you doing, Mira? Let's start with you.
Yeah, she goes. She goes first.
Being that she's joining us
Uh,
from Lebanon.
I have no idea what's going on, honestly. It's insane. Everything's insane. It feels
Yeah.
like we're depending on something that will never happen. That's how it feels, if it makes sense.
Well, what makes you? I mean, we know why you feel so pessimistic, but why specifically? For those in the audience who might not know, why are you feeling so, pessimistic at this moment?
Well, first of all, we're dealing with a genocidal entity that's always been open about, hey, like, yeah, we do want to kill you. We do want to steal your land. We just don't care about you, and we do not care about the international community and international laws and humanitarian laws, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just shocked that people actually believe that Israel will commit to the obligations or like any obligations that get sent its way. Yeah, you gotta stop. You gotta get out. You gotta get out of Lebanon, of the places that you're occupying. You gotta stop killing civilians under the pretext of targeting Hezbollah militants and all of that stuff, which is not true, by the way. And you gotta stop with basically ethnic cleansing South Lebanon and Gaza and all of these places, which we know Israel will never do.
Yeah, right before we hopped on, Netanyahu, according to Israeli media, actually already told Trump that they're not going to honor the agreement
Huh,
that they're going to
surprise.
stand on. Yeah, I
I'm
know.
so shocked.
Yeah, you have to wonder because supposedly part of the reason the agreement was even, announced when it was supposedly was because Iran managed to extract some concessions from the U.S. in exchange for not attacking Israel because they bombed Beirut earlier in the
Yeah.
day. For everyone who doesn't know, yeah. Oh, okay. Here's Al Jazeera Live. If you don't like our program, watch us watching a different program.
Not this one though. Watch a better one.
Yeah, Al Jazeera's. Yeah. We don't like Al Jazeera here.
You,
But
you, you don't. You guys don't like Gulf state propaganda? What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with the Gulf
watch.
states? I thought they were great.
Everyone should watch Mira's program. Go to VPOL News. Follow
Oh
VPOL
my God,
News
thanks.
on every meta
Instagram.
platform and YouTube and Instagram,
Yeah.
especially. That's the big one. VPOL News is where it's at. Vocal Politics is where you'll find it on YouTube. But I'm really curious because right now it seems that there's a conflict between a neo-colonial model for Lebanon, which is what the U.S. wants to impose, and the outright colonial one that Israel is hoping to domineer. Is that a fair assessment?
We've never had a day's rest since the Ottoman Empire, I guess. We've been always under some sort of control, from the Ottomans to the French to Israel occupying us to Syria occupying us, like in some sort. And now Israel again. So that's not nice. That's not fun because it's like we've never actually been sovereign. We've actually always have been ruled by some sort of entity, by some sort of party. Which is insane to tell someone, "No, hey, yeah, guys, we are actually a sovereign country, but we gotta ask the US to tell Israel to take permission so we can fix a water pipe in South Lebanon. But we're sovereign."
Yeah.
I also
Well,
think the more important the distinctive characteristic between every phase of occupation that the Levant has been through has not necessarily been the totality of the colonial campaign, like what that looked
Mm,
like. It was more what was the most extractive policy benefiting the actor occupying at that time. For the Ottomans, that meant a more benign form of occupation. For the Israelis, it means something much more direct. Right now, for the US, it means something that can be a little bit more neocolonial. So I think that that's the economic and extractive political aspect of colonialism is really, really key to understanding what happens when in Lebanon.
But aside from it being, just part of the fanatical Greater Israel vision, what strategic resources does Lebanon have that's so coveted by Israel and just what about it makes it such a prize to be won?
Buffer zone?
Propaganda. If I were to answer, it's the propaganda of the Christian state in the Middle East.
Basically trade. Before the 2020 August 4th Beirut port blast, our trade wasn't the greatest because the economic fallout did start in 2019 or before that, some would argue. But the whole Beirut port blasting, it really just set us off into one of the worst economic crises in history, I guess. For example, people used to get paid, let's say, $800. That was the average salary in Lebanon in 2014. Okay. Now $800 barely cover rent. So, and most people are now getting paid $600-ish. So you can understand the economic situation resulting from that blast. But it's not just the blast, by the way, it's just one factor. I feel like I have to be very specific here. And everyone's saying, not everyone, some people were saying, yeah, Israel was the one who actually blasted the port. They were the ones who bombed the port, while everyone else was blaming more parties, other parties, and blah, blah, blah. But after that happened, we can see the Haifa port in the Israeli occupation. The trade there just got better, even though the economic situation is now in shit. But we cannot deny that the port situation there did get better. So it does raise some questions. Because after every single thing that, every single conspiracy theory everyone came up with, I feel like most people just deep down believe that Israel is behind everything. And my AirPod just fell out for some reason. Okay.
It was Israel.
It was Israel.
That's what I believe.
I did the same. I had Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson on my show. He's a retired Army colonel. And I asked him if he thought that Israel was behind this explosion that happened. And the official thing is that no, it wasn't. It was just poorly stored explosive material.
Nitrates.
But he said, I wouldn't put it past him. I don't know.
Well, it does seem that, we've seen a lot of, especially when I go on the Lebanon subreddit, which is just full of I don't know if you could classify them as the more urban bourgeois, but they all say they're all very anti-Hezbollah, anti-Iran,
yep,
pro-US in certain ways, and they see there seems to be I don't know if it's a delusion or belief that if the US is integrated into the Lebanese economy, then there can be some economic recovery. Or no, okay.
I was on the
I don't
Lebanese.
think so.
I was on the Lebanese subreddit, and I can actually say, but that is true because they go really crazy with pointing out all the bad stuff Hezbollah does. And I tried to post in there, and they did not like it.
I kind of want to comment on this because they always want to bring up the bad stuff Hezbollah apparently did. Which I'm not saying that Hezbollah never did anything, because not a single person who's into politics has clean hands. That's what we say.
Yeah.
But they always love to leave out every single thing that their war criminal leaders did. For example, in Beirut, between 1975 and 1990, we would get slaughtered over the way we pronounce the word tomato. if it's either like the Palestinian or Beiruti dialect, the Sunni dialect, or if it's either the Christian way of saying tomato. So it's basically, yeah, they literally had crates of tomatoes like at checkpoints, and they would pick them up and they'd ask you, how would you say this? If you said Banadura or Bandora, if you said Bandora, you'll get killed. If you said Banadura, no, you're safe.
Good Lord.
Which is insane.
When
What is-
I
is that-
talk about like Syria and the things, the level of sectarianism that we had to deal with there, people think I'm like exaggerating. This is what groups like Hezbollah had to combat, and that's never brought into the perspective when
Exactly.
we talk about the scale of violence and the direction of violence that is used in the Middle East.
And also, like, not to mention, like, some of their leaders are actually Israeli collaborators. With the whole Jaish Lahad thing in South Lebanon and all of that stuff, Khiyam, torture camps and all of that. Do you actually want to leave all of that aside and just bring up a certain part of a certain someone's history? Okay,
Yeah.
sure, if you want to lay all the cards on the table, put yours on.
That's a masterful trick. This is what it's all about. It's about stripping the context out of a story. They do it with normal criminals. Like, they'll never tell you the motive behind the crime. They'll only tell you that a terrible crime was made, and the people who control the narrative are the police. The police say blah 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 blah. Stripping out historical context to political stuff is exactly the same. It works, and people go, "Well, Hamas attacked them, and that's the end of the story," and it's not. Yeah.
The other thing I'll offer before we kind of move away from this point on Hezbollah and non-state armed groups in general is that the key point of context we miss when we talk about them is how they function outside of combat. So all of the social networks that Hezbollah provides in Lebanon compared to something like the Lebanese forces or the Lebanese army itself, or comparatively in Syria, what Hezbollah offered in Syria during key periods compared to what Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was offering in Syria in terms of schools, medical care, the elements of social support that actually sustain a community beyond just militarization. These groups, some of them operate often as pseudo-states, which you can make a legal argument under international law grants them certain rights to self-defense and to autonomy, whereas other groups are not operating with that basis of community and solidarity, and that creates very different obligations for them under international law.
Yeah, a few months ago, just one last point. A few months ago, I came across an old ABC report from like November 2001 during the height of the, post 9/11 fear and paranoia that gripped the US. And it was a senator talking about how Hezbollah is going to be the next Islamist group to launch an attack on American citizens on American soil. And it's so funny you say, like you said, the comparisons that are made within all Islamist groups being, melded into this one homogenous mass where it's like, well, no, HTS is actually Al-Qaeda, and they fought Hezbollah for very distinctive reasons, for geopolitical and theological reasons. And, like you said, the way that we can see how HTS is governing Syria and the immediate social services that Hezbollah has provided to the South out of necessity, the infrastructure for health and education they've built. That's, again, like you said, it's not to say that their hands are clean like any actor, but these are qualitatively different entities. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, what's the vibe like as far as people people in your neighborhood, and because I don't know the politics of this region. That's why Angie comes in and teaches me every week. But what is the vibe? I mean, is anybody backing the government? So, somebody must be, otherwise they would change. Or what's the real consensus with the people?
Most of the people that I know that back the government do not acknowledge that Israel is killing Lebanese army personnel.
Really? Wow.
For example, yeah. Like, you want to back the government? Sure. If you want the government is in full control to some extent, but it's not like it's actually protecting civilians and protecting soldiers that the US wanted them to go to like to the south without any weapons, without any light arms, while Israel was withdrawing from certain areas in the south.
Okay.
But that is insane. Like, if I want to give an example for, let's say, around 2 weeks ago, my grandmother's cousin, he is a brigadier general, Wissam Sabra. He was killed. Him and two other personnel, they were targeted in a vehicle. After Israel, yeah, they approved that Lebanese army personnel would be able to go to the south. Okay, sure, you want them to go to the south. Why are you sending them on suicide missions?
This is the Lebanese government you're talking about, troops.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And Hezbollah has no connection to the government. These soldiers never work with Hezbollah. They hate each other. They
No.
fight with each other. How's this work?
The guy that was targeted, like, he was a devoted Hezbollah hater.
Really?
That's just my extended family. They hate Hezbollah. So, if anyone wants to bring that up, hey, he's
What's
a relative. I know.
Yeah. What's their excuses? What do they say about supporting the government over the freedom fighters, the resistance?
Sectarian issues,
So religious disputes,
pretty much.
Christians versus Muslims?
Sunnis versus Shia, Muslims versus Christians,
Okay.
Druze versus everyone.
Okay. And
It's very
and one side, do they support Israel? Do they say, oh, they're fine? Or you said they're in denial. They just don't. They pretend like it's not happening.
I don't want to really expose my family that much, but like
I can say it if you
relatives,
Yeah.
extended relatives, like some of them are like, yeah, the state of Israel has the right to exist. And I'm like, no.
More of our, I would argue, and you correct me, Mira, from your perspective,
Yeah.
our parents' generation, a lot of them, I think, are like exhausted politically and intellectually to the point where they really don't see the point in continuing resistance. Like they've seen, you know, their parents' generation live and die, their generation die. Like they've seen martyrs in probably 3-4 generations now that I think from personal experience, I know many family friends or extended family members that'll say like, why can't we just let them live so that they'll let us live? And that I would think is more often the initial thread of not supporting resistance in some circles. For others, it's just not affected them yet.
That's the entire case. They're so tired. I don't blame them because they're very tired. They've witnessed how many wars till now? Like if we're talking, my parents were born in the early 80s. Sure,
Like genuinely, you can count them on both
1, 2, 3.
hands.
Exactly. But at the same time, it's good to keep them refreshed on what Israel existing actually means to us as people who are native to the region. It just means occupation, continuous genocide. We've seen that with Palestine since 48. It just means no more freedom. Like I'm a citizen of Lebanon. I'm a Lebanese citizen. I cannot go to the south. Because of why? Because of Israel.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, what is there a divide though too? Because they're in even in the Western politics, there's a divide with age. You got all the old timers want things to be, you know, they'll give up easily, and they'll also, you know, revert back to nostalgia and want some horrible, you know, thing from their past to exist. And then young people are more likely to be more revolutionary, or this is what my idea is. Is there an age difference with political beliefs? Like,
It does matter because the older generation did live through the Civil War, which was nasty. It was nasty. It was heinous. Basically, Beirut was divided into Western and Eastern Beirut. That's just one example. That's other than the whole tomato thing, the tomato crates.
yeah.
Beirut was divided into Western Beirut and Eastern Beirut. Western Beirut was for the Christians. Eastern Beirut was for the Muslims. Okay, that's how bad sectarianism was, and still is, by the way. There was this line that divided them. It was called the Green Line because no one was crossing to either side. So forestry literally grew there, and there used to be snipers on both sides, and they would just shoot at people who would ever like walk in the streets. It was
Mm.
bad.
I wonder, because I always, as soon as I hear about a conflict, I want to know who's backing which side, because I think this is when it comes to stoking tensions among racial groups or different, they do this masterfully. This is part of neoliberalism, is to turn everybody against each other. Are there outside forces obviously stoking each side, and who are the players?
Well, that depends on who you ask, right?
Well, I don't think you can talk about the Lebanese civil war at all without like contextualizing it first and foremost in the confessional government
Yeah.
system, which is set up by France and then maintained in the post-colonial period. So like it's entirely colonial manufacturing that creates the circumstances of this violence. So could there have been a way in which similar sectarian consequences emerge under a context where there was no French occupation? Sure, but the French occupation laid down every possible foundation to ensure that there would be sectarian divisions and political consequences for those divisions. So it wasn't necessarily like people waking up one generation and thinking like, I hate the Christian down the street. It was very much a like economically and socially incentivized like re-education that happened over generations of colonial integration.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
true.
a-
But that's also like, I only said it in a way that's like, why do people still feel that way? Why do older generations still feel that way? Which is
Oh yeah.
valid in a way, but it's also so weird because grow out of it, you know?
Well, I want to kind of ask you, Mira, because I know that this is different for Lebanon, but I know in Syria, like the older generations have also, in a way that we don't, have this glimmer of like the good life for those few years that they got to live them when they were like maybe 11 to 21, whenever there was a moment of rest or like a little bit of peace in the region. And they almost hold that much higher than they do than it probably was in reality. So there's also a rose-colored like there's an outweighing of nostalgia and reality that causes them to think that like if we just stopped fighting everything would be okay and we would like everything comes up but lawa and we're fine. But there's a fundamental disconnect in like what politics looked like back then and what their capacity for agency was like. So to them, it's like, we need to just leave it to the state because the state is the only way we're going to be represented in the world. And we just haven't found a way to make it click yet, that the state is no longer an option.
I'd love to keep it to the state, but like the state is currently a US puppet. So
Yeah.
do I really want to leave it to the state? I don't think so. No. Not when it tries to legalize the killing of one part of my people. It just won't happen.
What is the current administration getting in return for its being a puppet? I mean,
A good
is
pat
he,
on the head.
and maybe a little bit of extra money?
So far, I don't know anything about any money, but it's definitely, it will happen. Like, we cannot lie to each other. It's definitely a part of it, but we're in so much deep shit. Like, our economy is so bad. I don't think a couple of $1 million will actually be able to fix it.
Yeah.
Reconstructing the South alone would take a lot of money. A lot of money, which is insane.
Which is assuming that the government would like direct funds, like
Which it
foreign
never
funds to
did.
the South.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Which it never did because it was always Iran.
Yeah.
It never did.
Yeah, I'm curious, and some people have been asking this too. When you see, like, there are people who say that, oh, Lebanon is being colonized by Iran. Both Israeli Zionists say that, and even some Lebanese in, certain circles will say that.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, the whole premise of the sovereigntists is that, right? To get Iranian influence out of Lebanese politics. I'm wondering how these people reconcile the fact that just earlier this week, once Israel bombed Beirut, Iran, struck Israel in response. I mean, I don't know if they see them just embroiled in a conflict they don't need to be in or what. Like, I don't know if there's a reconciliation that happens where, okay, well, maybe Iran is looking out for Beirut or.
Funny question. The Lebanese Zionists that I know did not mutter a single word. Not a single word.
Wow.
Not even an Instagram story. Nothing.
Please trust that, like, to be Arab and Zionist or like to be Arab and against, like, loudly against your resistance, whether it's in a large way or a small way, requires you to be really comfortable with cognitive dissonance in a way that's like, in addition to the comfort with cognitive dissonance we already are forced to live with. So I think you just have to assume that they're either observing it. I've seen this actually. Many analysts I've seen say it as like Iran trying to curry favor, seeing it as an act of soft power, which I'm like, that's some expensive soft power, but fuck me, I guess. So
Iran literally, it basically just not endangered itself, but like put itself at risk, put itself and its infrastructure at risk of getting hit and its civilians of getting killed because of like this mutual respect between Hezbollah and Iran. Do you think Iran would go into it without actually calculating the consequences of what might happen if it actually just defended Lebanon?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of armchair analysts think they're smarter than people who have spent decades in, statecraft and military leadership.
Are you talking about me, man?
We're very prescriptive here on on HR News. YouTube
I might
Live.
wear a fancy shirt, but I'm not a newsman. I'm just, getting other smart people to talk for me. I ask stupid questions. That's my job. So, I mean, what do you think what Israel is doing is calculated whatsoever? Because it seems to be erratic and desperate.
It is desperate. It's more desperate than ever.
Hmm.
It's going against the will of Donald Trump. Like, even when Donald Trump, he like called Netanyahu, he was like, "You son of a why are you doing this?"
I don't know
It's
if
it's also making Trump look stupid.
Yeah. And it makes him look weak, and he doesn't like that.
I think you could make the case that Israel bombing Beirut today was Netanyahu's last-ditch effort to, derail the negotiations. And I know there's some people out there who think that because the U.S. and Israel are so geostrategically aligned, that means that Netanyahu and Trump are always getting along at all times, and every rift between them is just a carefully manicured piece of propaganda.
Sure.
If that were true, then a lot of the decisions Trump has made would not have happened, first of all. But
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I think Israel is heading into elections. Netanyahu is desperate to win. He knows that this war is popular amongst Israelis because they see Iran as the ultimate threat. And, like Mira said, I think it's just desperation.
Yeah. I mean, do you think he'll go to jail if he loses the election?
Definitely.
Definitely.
they're not
I think so,
forgiving
yeah.
people. Like, it's embarrassing.
They
Benjamin
hold a lot of
Netanyahu is
grudges.
an embarrassing politician right now to Israeli society. He has not committed genocide fast enough. That is the key point to them, is that he has failed to accomplish the task at hand. It's not that he's like a bad lead. It's that he's not extreme enough for them, and he's frankly probably only getting as desperate as he is now because he's trying to make the point to the Israeli public that, like, no, I will stand in Donald Trump's face. I will defy the US. We will do what we want. This is like it's very much like a bit of a dick measuring contest at this point. And I'm afraid Netanyahu is winning.
Yeah. He's just crazy.
Not
He's got nothing.
You can't really say that.
You're right.
Well, even now, I think you can. I mean, Netanyahu says that he's going to stay in South Lebanon. It's going to push the U.S. to say, okay, well, what is it going to do then? What lengths
Careful,
will it go
Netanyahu, FPV coming your way.
Well,
It's
yeah,
so
and that's the
funny.
other thing is it's not like Israel is winning necessarily in Lebanon either, in that they're, facing the FPV threat, which is like just rewritten the rules of asymmetrical warfare in a lot of
Mm.
ways.
I think though, like the calculus of what it means to win in South Lebanon is very different for Israelis than it is for the Lebanese or for the US. Like the US is functionally just like playing World of Warcraft right now and diddling away on its laptop. Israel is kind of doing the same thing, but just looking to gain as much as it can. They do not care about their fallen soldiers. They will take casualties, and they have many more. Like the Jews of Brooklyn are ready for you.
They'll
They're
just recruit more people.
yeah, they have more.
From Japan and
As
France
much as
and
like Israeli anti-Zionists want to go out and protest and pretend that they're all like rejecting their orders of the draft, that's not what we're seeing in reality. So Israel is not worried about casualties. They will take as much damage as they need to in South Lebanon to achieve the goal of a mass, like pushing that boundary, pushing the physical boundary of Lebanon's borders. They don't have a deadline for that. They're not running on any sort of like scarcity, unfortunately.
yeah, it seems like it. I mean, what
They're
can you
playing the
do?
war of attrition thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because they're desperate and they have nothing else to do, and they're scared. They're running scared. Yeah, I mean, as the hegemony shrinks, the United States' power and the dollar, ultimately Israel becomes more vulnerable in a lot of ways. So I can understand, that they need to kill all these children right away. What can you do in Lebanon as far as, I mean, do they still have elections, or didn't they ban them until 2028 or something? Or what's the story there? And would you even have a shot at a democratic, next, get a person in there who knows what they're doing and has some balls?
when it comes down to elections, I'm pretty sure that they're still up. I have not checked. I've had worse issues to deal with, for example, that. But elections here are, well, it depends from each center because a lot of centers did get accused of manipulating the the votes, which is so funny because everyone knows that in a something majority area, like for example, let's say an Orthodox area, we all know which party they're going to vote for. If it's a Sunni area, we all know which party they're going to vote for, exact,
Mm.
etc., etc. So it's not as rigged as I'd like to say because it is still the people who are voting because it is still the people who are voting based in their hometowns, which is kind of funny because a lot of hometowns actually do not exist now because of Israel. It's not funny actually. That's very insensitive. So I'd like to see how the elections would go, considering that a lot of them are inaccessible at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that might play to the government's advantage if the the most marginalized groups can't even get to the ballots, or
What so I, because I don't know much about it. So the regions that are split up, you said we have the same thing. We can tell in an election what's going to happen, basically, because these regions have been steeped in their own ideologies for years and years. We know how Alabama will go. And there's swing states and everything like that. But so what is Lebanon? I mean, as far as north, south, east, west, what are we looking at? Where are the conservative rednecks and where are the,
I think it's
the
much more localized than that. Like you're imagining a
Yeah,
state sort of thing, but we're talking
Yeah.
village
when
to
each,
village here.
Oh, really?
not even village to village, every neighborhood.
Mm.
Yeah, in the
Wow.
cities,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah, my neighborhood, 5 minute walk away, that's a whole different political
Yeah.
alignment.
Okay.
That's a whole different thing.
I
But
suppose
the
that
reason for
happens.
that,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. The reason for that, Chris, is that like the US is built upon like an economy of opportunity thing where you're not staying where you're born. where we're from, like, you live in your hometown. If you go somewhere else, you're coming back to your hometown for 3 to 6 months out of the year. There's a real like permanency to space. So it's not that people are like entrenched in an ideology and just kind of remaining backwards. It's that you're around the same people. Like, you are the same people from 10 generations ago. That's the same families and the same, in the same houses a lot of the times, in the same spaces. So it's a very literal like line of when we say like this is an Orthodox neighborhood, so we know they're going to vote this way. It's because like
Are there ancient
voted that way last year and the year before that and the year before that?
Are there anciently old grievances that go back families, centuries? Do they still, or is it like that? Like, oh, that village over there, we hate them, and we always, throw dog feces at, is it like that, or?
Well, we don't necessarily throw dog feces at them.
We do that where I'm from, so yeah.
You're American.
Like local stuff anywhere, I imagine.
No, in America we shoot people. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Gotta love the Second Amendment.
I'm sorry. I always tell stupid jokes because I need to do that so I don't get depressed and kill myself. But yeah, it's quite a mess, everything. But yeah, well, I don't know. I always think, is it class related too? Are the distinctions because there's a rich neighborhood and a poor neighborhood? Are that grievances like that?
Hell yeah. If you go to downtown Beirut right now, it's a whole different world. A whole different world. Like, downtown Beirut is normally like a 30-minute drive away from Dahi because of the traffic congestion, nothing else. They are two different worlds. Like, if you visit Dahi now, 2 buildings destroyed, 1 building up. 3 buildings destroyed, 3 buildings up. That,
Wow.
it's like a 1-car drive, and there are entire neighborhoods destroyed. I visited one. It was insane. The smell that it reeked of because of the bombs that Israel uses is insane.
Well, they're using internationally banned munitions, right? They're using like white phosphorus and I forget what else.
Is there a pattern to the types of neighborhoods that are being targeted, or is there any pattern there?
Not necessarily, other than the claims that Hezbollah militants, Hezbollah fighters, Hezbollah personnel, and it's just civilians. It's just civilians.
Yeah.
Like, even, don't get me wrong, even if you want to target Hezbollah fighters and their homes, under international law, that's bad.
Yeah.
They're under civilian status at that point.
That's Hague bad, baby. Like, that's sorry, you just lost territory in the next negotiation bad. That is
well, their rationale and what I see from the the Lebanese apologists is that they will like give the Hezbollah fighter an option to leave the house with and that his family has to stay behind, or that he stays in the house, that his family has to leave, which again, even being erected on that premise is, like you said, it's still just flagrantly in violation of all international
if
norms.
they have that precision, if they have that precise level of intel, it's the obligation of the higher capacity state to go in and individually apprehend the person in question in order to abide by international law and not harm any of the civilians. And like, if you're going in to apprehend and then there are civilian casualties, that's easier to wrap your head around than an unmanned bomb. It's not. But I will say, Lebanon, more than Gaza, has completely demolished any potential for international law precedent in the future. Any case from here on out of extreme violence in an armed conflict can thank Israel's aggression on Lebanon for the null and voidness of international law, because this is what has completely destroyed it.
Why is it Lebanon as opposed to Gaza in your
Because
analysis?
Israel, for what it's worth, had a stronger argument for self-defense following October 7th. It wasn't strong enough that like an objective court, an objective international court probably would have carried it through if they were to, like, if you masked the actors, state A and state B. But it was stronger than the case that they have for Lebanon. It's what they are doing in Lebanon is like almost as if you had the Geneva Conventions in front of you and were writing up like the anarchist manual for how to violate it point by point. It is incredibly frightening the way that they have targeted specifically, I would argue, like in that instance, argue military personnel and their families. That's a terrifying precedent to set because they're also not limiting it to active military personnel. The Geneva Conventions have an entire section that govern how you handle people who were formerly a part of the military when you still want to hold them accountable for actions committed. But the moment they are not active parties to conflict, there's a really high standard for how they're treated in international law. So to think that you can completely violate all of those statutes while still forcing EMTs and ambulance drivers to vlog essentially their missions so that they can prove what's going on and have a record of their life in case they are bombed in their ambulance is a grotesque, like, true antithesis of international law that is they perfected in Ghazi and ensured that no one would fight against it. But now that it's being implemented in this context where there are no arguments to be used against it, Hezbollah is by many states no longer even recognized as either a non-state armed group nor a terrorist organization. This is one of the most egregiously unfounded, quote unquote, wars to be had between two states, potentially ever. It's a frightening standard to set.
For me, the psychologically, the exhaustion from people understanding that Palestine and Israel have been a divided thing for a very long time also keeps it so Lebanon is it's new in the sense that this was a more sovereign country. You know, Palestine was, Gaza was occupied by Israel through 2005 or whatever. So they've already been there. They already have almost encircled it completely. And so this is why maybe, but for me, like international law has been just slowly being killed over the last 3-4 years, 10 years, really. And now it's become just a running joke. Yeah.
I'd argue worse. Iraq
Worse?
happened.
Absolutely. But like, Britain cared about Iraq. The United Kingdom attempted to shittily, like they didn't do a great job, but attempted to intervene, refused to collaborate with the United States in several instances. Same with France. Like there was still a modicum of international political shame. Maybe that's what it is. There has become a complete eradication of international political shame that
Western,
like we live in Thucydides' world now in every way.
Yeah. Well, and the media has been, conglomerated and assimilated into the billionaire class, where every year that goes by that one of these guys buys a newspaper, and now we're at this peak moment where absolutely no anti-American stuff is ever said on the one network that we have.
Well,
now.
Barry Weiss is going to be heading CNN soon, so
that'll be great.
That's once the Paramount Warner Brothers merger is complete, Barry Weiss has already been tapped to head CNN, so you can expect another, just as she's destroyed CBS. Again, none of these, we should be clear, none of these legacy institutions were, bastions of free and independent thought per se at all. But I mean, it's like any
what's frightening though is that they set the precedent for legitimacy. Like that's the fear. It's not that like, oh, you're corrupting a fantastic source of unbiased factual information and knowledge production. It's that you now are the knowledge producer. I mean, it's just very frightening. Like when we no longer have the ability to be seen as legitimate in the lines of work of knowledge production, however that, whether it's journalism, whether it's research, whether it's like military, any realm, it's very frightening because
I think it was always bad, and the only thing that changed was the curtain got pulled back because we have social media or whatever, and we can prove to each other what's actually going on. Like they've always been lying to us about what's going on through the news. The New York Times went along with all the Cold War shit, and Amnesty International published stuff that started the Gulf War, saying that there was babies in incubators. It's always been that way. We're just finding out now, and now we're slowly turning away.
Yeah, they're destroying themselves, basically.
Yeah, all for the sake of this ideology where they have to sell everything, and now it's just crypto bros and pyramid schemes and what the like poly market betting and Donald Trump saying we're coming close to a thing, and then the stock market goes up, and then he bombs some shit more. It's not about doing a war or not doing a war. It's about saying you're going to do something and then placing a bet quickly so that you reap the maximum benefits. That's all. It seems like that's all that anybody in that fucking country cares about at this point.
Well,
comical.
CNN did get that fantastic interview with the Hezbollah fighter.
What happened? Yeah, what happened with that?
Isabella Young did do a great job at finding a guy.
Well, you know what had this exact energy but didn't get the same reaction? When, what's her name? Clarissa went and found the prisoner from Sednaya who like comes out and he is freshly showered with manicured hands and he's like, or the child who's like 6 years old and he's like, my dad has been in jail for 8 years. We have it. Journalistic integrity across CNN is at an all-time high in the Middle East.
It's so funny because this is not something new. It's always happened. It has always happened. For example, there's this movement that's called Mafi Wafa. There's no loyalty. And it's basically just a bunch of random people who are posing to be certain fighters and everything. Just to like trick journalists and all of that stuff. Because in your right mind, wouldn't it be very suspicious that a Hezbollah fighter would be gladly to have an interview with you during an active war?
And two, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just so goofy. Like, I love the jeans. Like, these guys are not, they're not Hamas in like, 2024, where, these are just like freshly recruited, like, young men who don't have who've lost the infrastructure to get like proper military uniforms.
Why are they on a hill? Why are they on a hill? No one's asking.
Another thing is
our studios.
Another thing is Hezbollah fighters do not wear that kind of thing. There are two completely different uniforms.
Wear what specifically? Like just
they have a military guard.
So like,
yeah. Well, that's again. It speaks to the ignorance of the Western media and Western intelligence, for that matter, when they talk about like they think that every Islamist group operates in the same way, and that it's not about it's just terrorism, quote unquote. Who are these guys? I
have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I'm just pulling up random pictures.
Like
they wear Nikes.
Hezbollah is just objectively one of the most organized, well-structured, well-funded non-state military. It is the most it is the largest and most sufficiently bankrolled non-state military actor in the world. These guys are not just going to come up to you. Yeah, it is the largest non-state military actor in the world.
Did you know that there's also Hezbollah in Pakistan?
Really? Same motto, same theme.
I'm not sure, honestly. I found out like 3 weeks ago.
I'll look into that.
I was like, oh, okay, nice. And Pakistan as well, represent.
Yeah. Just as Hamas was in Venezuela under Maduro too.
I was about to say they should have an office in Brazil.
Well, everybody, open up your local chapter today.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. We're joking, FBI. We're joking.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
I'm not joking.
No one has anyone. She's in Lebanon. She can say that.
Come at me. It's either you or Israel. Honestly, I don't care at this point.
I like her. Okay.
Whoever has a better shot.
Well, the whole point, we should be clear. Part of the reason why we're joking, and part of the reason why these fears of Hezbollah expanding beyond Lebanon is it is born of a very specific Lebanese context. And it has always been about serving the interests and people of southern Lebanon. That is, whether you agree with them or not, that is the core fundamental tenet of their mission. Which is why, you know,
what I think is really important to note is that if that mission was filled by the state, Hezbollah would no longer have a reason to exist. And the majority of the support, the people who stand behind Hezbollah, would not be like continuing to support perhaps a group that is antagonizing the government just to antagonize the government. Like, that's not the goal here.
Exactly.
If the needs of southern Lebanon were being met, if the people were being protected across Lebanon, if there had been reasonable efforts of reconciliation around issues of sectarianism, I don't think that we would have this like animosity around a group the way that we do.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
negligence of South Lebanon by the government has been here forever. It's
Should
not
be
new.
considered like a crime of humanity in and of itself, I would argue.
Yeah.
What chance do they have at winning the hearts and minds of the people, or overtaking the government, or do they even want that? And what is their stated goal? Getting rid of, neutralizing Israel is one of the things that they would like to do, and stop, occupation and illegal aggression and stuff like that. But would they ever be able to really become more of a moderate political party and like?
They are.
They are a political party.
Well, I mean, no, like, but like overthrow
they have representation.
Wait till you
Lebanese
find
parliament.
out about the social services they provide.
Well, I think that's the bigger
tell
thing.
me. I don't know.
The goal of Hezbollah isn't necessarily to like govern the state of Lebanon. It's to like establish sovereignty. It's to be the wall of sovereignty because the state doesn't have that. I don't think that, and I mean, truly, Mira, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that Hezbollah politically claims to have the capacity of a state, nor the ideology to like found or support statehood. Their ideology is around sovereignty from Israel and the protection of the people of the South, who tend to be...
you're right. They always iterated the idea of like coexistence and all of that stuff.
Exactly.
But like they do work on the marginalized people, the people of the South, to actually be represented, to actually have a voice in politics, because for so many years, they were not even looked at twice. For so many years.
And
not to mention that Hezbollah... Oh, so sorry.
No, go on. Please go on.
This is like a complete tangential, but not to mention that Hezbollah is the large reason that many Christian villages throughout Syria and Lebanon still exist.
Exactly.
Across the past 15 years would have been wiped out were it not for the protection of Hezbollah.
Well, then this is why I'm asking, is because it seems like after a while people would understand who the good guys are, and these political movements could gain ground. But then is it a democracy? Do you vote? How does it work? And what chance would they have at ultimately taking back their country for the good of the people?
The good that they're doing, though, is like, this is experienced in pockets. I've had to explain this with regards to Syria, but like the Lebanese people experienced extreme harm under the Ba'ath regime. The Ba'athist regime under Hafiz and Bashar al-Assad caused severe harm to the people of Lebanon, to the point that a lot of them there was no way to... I'm like thinking of the words in Arabic and I can't translate them fast enough. There was no way to merge the ideas that the overthrow of Assad was going to jeopardize us in the face of Israel, along with their hatred of Assad. It was too powerful because the experience they had instilled that in them. And I think that we as a region have been so traumatized by each other and by external forces that there are truly like traumatic opinions that have been formed and are held from that perspective, that like they're not investigating the good that Hezbollah has done for the Shia or Christians of Lebanon and Syria. They are remembering the instance of harm that was caused to them or their family 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago by by Hezbollah or by a group that was similar to them. There's so many of those instances that it feels like to talk politics in a lot of our circles is stepping over landmines and trying to like articulate ideology without invoking a group or a regime or like a single party that someone might have loyalty to, because you're more likely to find commonality in individual ideas than you will in whatever group traumatized you.
I think, and I feel like the Balkans, because my wife goes to Bosnia a lot and stuff, the vibe is the same. Like there's so much historical stuff, fresh, generation to generation too, where everybody has a different enemy, you know, in their neighborhood. And
your enemy looks kind of like your dad's enemy, so you associate them and you build up on the rage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, and, you know, just like the former Yugoslavia, there's no real reconciliation that happened. There was just sort of this decision to stop one day, and all the tensions are still, you know, there underneath the surface, but there was no political resolution.
Yeah, and that's what I always ask. I always ask, who's stoking the flames behind the scenes? Which capitalist or which country, or you know? But it's not always the case. Sometimes people just really have historical trauma that it's hard. That the Hutu and the Tutsis, right, down there, they just cannot. They just, and it's so ridiculous, so ridiculous.
Well, that was like an artificial category as well.
Sure, but it didn't take anything. We always talk about this because you say, well, you know, they were forced into it. And what was the categorization? Tell me again the categorization.
Well, if you make the categorization like, hey, you small group of people that have cows, you get to be rich and happy, and the rest of you just be poor, I guess. And also, like, you can only marry down. Yeah, like that is really, if you deal human beings an unfair hand, that is a great way to inspire like the prisoner dilemma in them. They are going to seek justice in their eyes. And when you do that for like 300 years, justice looks a lot like genocide now, especially when like the eyes of the UN are on it and don't intervene.
Yeah, well, the cognitive dissonance of of all the Gulf states and everybody who actually speaks Arabic or calls themselves Muslim, and allowing Israel to do what they're doing and then go and sign the Abraham Accords. You know, this is what human beings are always gonna do. Mira, you're new here, but I always say this: if you want to know politics, you better study zoology, because people are just really highly susceptible to manipulation. Animals who
Well, and that's
just Pavlov dogging everyone.
And that's why, you know, I think people should understand that Hezbollah, like we've established, is from South Lebanon. It is not an internationally aspiring or even governance aspiring actor. It is purely there for the defense of the marginalized people of southern Lebanon. But Hezbollah is just like, you know, any other group that opposes Israel, is used as the pretense for things like bombing Beirut or attacking Lebanon.
Like, here's the thing. When Israel first started attacking Lebanon, Hezbollah never existed. It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
The first ever recorded attack was in 1948. It was the first Fola massacre.
Literally,
that's the first ever recorded one.
Yeah. The year that
which like 48 is before you have clear boundaries even drawn between the south of Lebanon and Palestine.
Yeah.
Like,
is it true what Adam just said? Are they not? They're not seeking real government. They just want to be local, like community helpers or stuff. Do they have government aspirations?
They don't want to be. That's like the fundamental misunderstanding, is like they are doing this out of necessity. They don't want to be the only social network provider. Like Hezbollah, I am sure, does not want to be providing hospitals and schools. Their funding could go to tanks. Their funding could go to drones. Like but they are providing social services, because if they don't, those kids go without education. Those mothers have to give birth in their homes. Like an entire segment of the population gets left about 100 years behind in terms of technology, medical advancement, education. Like the world, when you're an hour and 45-minute drive from Beirut, it's a real, like, the issue is in the lack of state capacity, not in the desire for a group to govern. They're seeking to provide state capacity, not to take over the state and govern.
I would say
Exactly.
in the long term, if they do, if they're able to neutralize the threat, which is why they exist in the first place, if they finally neutralize that threat, what do you think would happen to Hezbollah? You know, let's say beautiful situation, Israel is totally neutralized, everybody gets their homes back. What happens to Hezbollah?
It's a political party.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I
it.
would assume.
Which would continue to provide social services to certain people, or like not just certain people, because other groups can actually benefit from the services that they provide. If
They would
like there's
integrate
this
those
void
services
from
into
the
the
government.
state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why it provides the social services in the first place, because there's this huge void by the government. For example, it's not just in the south, it's also in the north of Lebanon. A few years ago, a school wall, like a school ceiling, collapsed on students and killed 2 students, I believe, because the government did not even like bother to check if the building was still, able to like hold classes and all of that stuff. You just kill people because of your own negligence.
Yeah,
Do you expect people to trust you?
we kill children with machine guns in America. That's how we do it. So
It's fine. Some war criminals here did that as well.
Well, you mentioned northern Lebanon. I also want to bring, because there's all this buzz, especially in the Israeli media, about tapping al-Shara to be the because the Lebanese army won't march in and disarm Hezbollah. That HTS and all of al-Shara's gangs will be the ones to march into Lebanon and confront Hezbollah. But Jelani seems.
ISIS in Syria, back in 2014 to 2016, I think, they used to go into Bekaa, into Western Lebanon, and they just bomb random places. They used to go into Dahiya and they'd bomb at random times. It was a scary event. My parents would drop me off at school, like at the door, and then they pick me up. And I'm like, yeah, sure, it's all of that stuff, but I literally live a 5-minute walk away from school.
Good Lord. I didn't realize they'd.
You're like, no.
It was insane. It was at the most random times.
We forgot what ISIS was. I don't know what we've been drinking for the past 10 years. We forgot.
And now there are people on Facebook who are calling for that to happen again, and they're threatening the people of Bekaa, better watch out, better get ready.
They were just yesterday or the day before was the anniversary of one of the first big massacres in Iraq. And there were posts commemorating those massacres. And there are Syrians, there are little Jolani stands in the comments of those posts saying Alhamdulillah, wa mashallah, wa aqbal al-ba'du, like cheering it on and saying like next one coming soon, posting. Those are fine. A Christian man in Homs just yesterday Syria time, was arrested for posting something that was like, man, I guess we kind of had it better under the last regime, was arrested for that. I'm hot.
Well, it was revealed.
Do you see what we're dealing with?
The face.
There's your guy.
Remember, was it Abu Mazen, the man who was held up as the poster child of Assad's brutality, who was tortured to death unfairly in a Syrian prison, and then later, not even a few days later, it was surfaced of him basically praising ISIS and saying that Syria will always be a Sunni majority country. But that didn't stop everybody, especially AJ Plus, from sharing that video and say the world failed this poor man. I think, Assad was
We
brutal
forget-
for many reasons.
We
but-
forget that like people were in the streets of Syria chanting the Alawis to the tombs, Christians to Beirut.
And they still are, to be fair. They still are now.
No, thank God. That's the only catchphrase that can stick.
But I think even Trump recently said he wants to, galvanize Jolani to fight
He's coming
Hezbollah.
to the US. Isn't
Yeah,
it,
he
like, tomorrow or
invited
the
him to
next
his
day?
birthday.
He's gonna be at the White House.
He invited him to his birthday, I think.
Yes, he
That's
did.
so
He did.
cute.
He also sent him
Adorable.
a few weeks ago. He sent him some cologne, some Trump cologne, and
And then
Jolani-
everyone was commenting that was shit.
Again, it's like this. He is literally Al Qaeda. We need to be as abundantly clear about that. This man is an actual, threat. He
Not
was a
only,
threat.
like, he went to Iraq at 19. Think about, like, do some
He was
mental
an
math.
Abu
How
Ghraib.
old- Chris, can you Google for us how old he is? I don't know off the top of my head
No,
what he claims
he
his
was in
age is.
Kambuka.
But, like, can
was-
we
he
do
was
some
where?
mental math and think about what was happening in Iraq when he was 19?
All right, I'll take bets. We're guessing Jolani's age. Everybody take a whack at it. What do you think? How old is he?
Early 40s, mid 40s.
Yeah.
Well, give me a number. Come on, shout out a number.
43.
Adam got it. It's 43. Yeah.
So,
Born
like,
October 29th, 1982. There you go.
my math is bad, but like 2001, 2002, babes? 2001, 2002, Iraq?
Gee, what was happening? What was
You
happening in
joined
Iraq?
Al Qaeda and
He was getting prepped in Kambuka, so
Yeah. Again, this is where the perils of not understanding that not all Islamists are the same. That
Or like
different
him.
Islamic-
or like
Sorry.
him playing football with decapitated heads.
well, like, can
Did
we
we forget about that?
problematize the term Islamist also? Because, like, would you
Yes.
consider Hezbollah Islamists? Because I wouldn't. Like, is their ideology rooted in Islam? Sure.
Like, what is
the
an Islamist?
ideology
Well, that's-
circulating around Islam? Is it theological?
I'm not using necessarily the term because I think that it's an apt description. I'm just saying that, like, that is when we talk about in security circles in the United States and Israel, it's, Islamists this,
I'm
Islamists
gonna
It's
that.
the
introduce you
it's
to
the-
something. It's takfiri.
Takfiri, yes,
What?
that's a better
What
way
is
of
it?
doing Yes,
Takfiri.
What is
Takfiri.
that? Duck Fury. What?
Someone's actually already put it in the comments. TAKFIRIS. Takfiri. In the
Oh, yeah,
sense
okay.
that they, like, I don't know, how would you translate this, Mina? Like, they,
Like infidel is technically the literal translation.
Pretty
Infidels,
much.
like,
they're
Ish.
like onto you. They're projecting that to you.
but Hezbollah has called
Okay.
Al Qaeda Takfiri.
Yeah.
Excommunication.
Excommunication.
Takfir.
It's
Well,
Like
it's
a
like
non-
it's the invocation of their ideology upon anyone who does not agree with it. To be a takfiri is that you are essentially like renouncing or applying the utmost disrespect and lack of even complete rejection of any other faith. So to be a
Okay.
takfiri in the Arabic context means that any sect difference is enough typically to like condone violence.
Okay, yeah. Small grievances between, the Christians can get that way too. The Christianists, we'll call them.
Christianism.
LF. Yeah.
That is actually kind of funny.
Oh, I've seen Baptists and Methodists,
I think we may have.
Mormons, our obligatory mention of invocation of Mormonism.
Oh, yeah, Mormons. Take a drink.
Salafi. Salafi's different though. Salafi is like confined to Sunni, certain Sunni groups though. Like the
Salafi,
ones
Salafi, Shafi'i, all of these.
Wahhabi,
So,
like
yeah.
Wahhabi. Like it's very specific.
all my
brand.
homies and I hate Wahhabism.
It's giving like a DEI kind of like they create multiple hashtags for their identities. Like I'm Takfiri son. Wahhabi moon.
Rising, yeah.
Salafi Rising. Yeah.
Salafi Rising, yeah. They have their
Yeah.
own co-star app. It is, but that's also, I think it's funny because I've tracked in real time, as everyone here has probably too, just the evolution of how the Syrian revolution, the prevailing Syrian revolution, quote unquote, has been received in the West. And I'm seeing Syrians in Syria, even Sunnis, growing disillusioned with these changes, that this hasn't been the total upheaval of the existing order. And meanwhile, I see like there's this page, I don't want to give it any credence by mentioning it, but there's this prominent page on Instagram that's clearly run by Al-Qaeda sympathizers. I'll just call them that because that's what they are at the end of the day, who are singing the praises of Jolani. But a lot of the people I see contributing aren't even Syrians, for one. And I think in the West especially, you see people praising Jolani as still the righteous savior. Meanwhile, those who are living under, I mean, I don't want to say under HTS governance because this government doesn't exist outside of Damascus, really, which is also why the idea of them marching into Lebanon to fight Hezbollah is so funny. Yeah, sorry, I forgot.
Like, the lack of governance is still, people, I think that we say that, and people, that is why there is a lack of urgency in the West, is because what has been advertised for the pockets of policy that are critical of the governance is that it still lacks capacity and it is not reaching beyond the capital. And what that like registers to the mind of the audience is that, okay, this isn't a group that has amassed enough power. What that should register in the mind of someone who's like thinking about the civilian population is that, okay, so someone who gets murdered in Homs no longer has a police force to call. No longer has a state to adjudicate like death and life, no longer has places to register birth under the state that are accepted. So we're running into issues in villages where children are being born and having to be registered under offices of the former regime. This was primarily during 2020, late 2023, 2024. And then those documents might not be accepted later down the road. Not only might not be accepted as legitimate, but might warrant you as like a regime sympathizer to have been receiving documents from the regime after the turnover. There's so many intricacies that come with not having state capacity. I mean, the massacres that we've seen on the coast alone, we have valid information that tells us that those originated with orders in Damascus. But even if they hadn't, the fact that the government in Damascus could not do anything about outright ethnic cleansing happening 3 hours to the north is horrifying.
Wow. Yeah.
No, that's a good way of putting it. And again, I think what the common thread between Syria and Lebanon, I don't want to say failed statehood, but the de-development of a state, or, in cases, the strangling of the development of a state in its cradle, really. Like, has Lebanon ever had the chance to develop a sovereign, unified state? Syria did for a time, I think in part because it had the benefit of geography of not being close enough to Israel where, those kind of incursions can happen. But did Lebanon ever have that chance?
Apparently it's not even gonna have that chance again because Julani, like I literally saw a video clip of him today where he was like, yeah, we're talking about the Shaba farms. They belong to us. They're not Lebanese. Even these are occupied by Israel, which they are occupied by Israel. And like him bringing that up right now.
The Zolan is getting bombed. Like, the Zolan is getting bombed, dude.
Take care of the lands that everyone agrees that they are yours first. And then we can talk about the Shaba farms.
Well, I mean,
and people used to get on Bashar al-Assad, by the way. The one thing people had on Bashar al-Assad was that he abandoned the Zolan. In terms of Israel, you had a lot on him otherwise. But though in terms of Israel, The one thing you could say about Bashar al-Assad was that he gave up on the Zolan, which he did, but he didn't also give them the Natriya or like the general south of Syria and also its airspace and Sueda. It's too
Wow.
much. It's getting
And
to the
peace
point where
talks.
it's really too much.
You know, I remember when right after the Ba'athist government fell, I remember I posted, like I always do, breaking Israeli tanks are now, rolling into Syria. And somebody commented, "Oh, this is such a lie." And I'm like, but then I delved deeper into the conversation, and it turns out these are the same people who think that Assad was always in league with Israel. Like Assad was always a Zionist puppet. It's like, again, these people just do not understand. I don't know if it's like the generational trauma you both were describing earlier that just clouds their judgment, not even their judgment, but just clouds their ability to critically think and analyze geopolitical events. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not trying to deny what they've endured, but
If as soon as you identify yourself with the group, doesn't matter where you are in the world, as soon as you identify with that, it's very easy to skip right ahead to using violence to protect said group. It's embedded into sports. It's embedded into our psychology. It's a defect. Sorry, that's the I always like to get the zoological take.
the biological determinist.
I do.
I just think it's a little different if you set 5 mice up in a little tank. I feel like it's a little different if you train one of them to be an assassin and then you put them back in the tank and you're like, oh my God, who could have seen this coming? Where it kind of is like,
or it's just in the mice's nature to.
Yeah.
That's the issue I come up against, is that particularly in our region, we have been given a lot of shit to eat in our collective history. Like if we want to talk from Anatolia to the oh my God, the Arab Peninsula, we've been given a lot of shit to eat, and we've ate it. We've sat and we've ate
We're
it
still
together.
eating it.
Hey, we're still eating it, but we ate it
then-
together up
but
until
then-
very recently.
But then the Western media will tell you, oh, well, just Arabs, everyone from that region just loves to eat shit. It's just part of their culture. It's,
But people said the same thing about the Balkans. Like the concept of ethnic conflict in and of itself, I think we will eventually, maybe 50, maybe 100 years, if we survive as a species that long, we will get to a point where we understand that ethnic conflict is manufactured. There is no like biological function.
We
which
never had
causes us
borders.
to in-group, out-group. There is quite the opposite, like a natural inclination, which we have seen in the indigenous cultures of the world, to opt towards cooperation before confrontation. So there's a conscious choice made.
Well, we avoid conflict as a way to preserve our energy, but I don't fully agree. I think that there is some, like, I've been doing research since we had this conversation weeks ago, is like generational trauma is real. So they did studies with the Dutch winter when everybody had a famine and they had higher rates of cancer and different things. And they linked that directly back to changes in the DNA from exposed trauma. Same with Holocaust victims. They checked the DNA and the people had changes in their DNA based on the trauma that they lived through. And that means that certain groups over the course of a long time can develop traits. And one thing that I've been researching recently is something that Adam's like, you're being eugenicist, man. And I was like, no, I think Europeans from all scarcity, living through 1,000 years of scarcity, maybe more, constant wars, constant conflict, bad access to agriculture. They had lots of famines. They didn't know what they were doing. And if trauma can be passed down through DNA, then surely there is some credence to the idea that white colonialist people are like the worst people in the world. They're just the worst.
I didn't
I don't
object to
know.
that premise, by the way. I want to be clear. I never once said
Okay,
anything unfair to
That's
the
kind of
whites.
the thing.
cool.
I don't think that that's fundamentally like disagreeing with what we're saying here. It's
Yeah.
kind of that there is an initial interjection of injustice that occurs to create the rest, because like the Irish famine wasn't because they didn't know how to grow things. It's because
Right.
they were being extracted
The
for
Brits.
capital gain.
Yeah.
In the same way that like the Ukrainian famine was, in the same way that frankly most of the modern famines have been extractive first.
Yeah. Well, the
For
other
better
thing
or
was
like,
the rise of Genghis Khan also was a scarcity mindset, because after a while these tribes in Mongolia would fight with each other, and eventually they all got so hungry and so tired that they all bound together, then created this big super group and went out on the road and played all their hit songs and cut everybody's
Well,
head off.
It's the quest for surplus, which is
It's the quest for surplus, and humans cannot say no to surplus generally, because if anybody that knows scarcity, there is a possibility that generationally they will become their amygdalas will become hyperactivated easily, and their reaction to the world that they live in might be a little too much. Like the way that we get stuff and need to save stuff and keep stuff, and capitalism is about accumulation and saving. This would check out perfectly with this diagnosis, saying years of living a certain way has made us think that we need to kill everybody and take their stuff. At least this is the behavior that we're seeing now out of white people, or the Western world, even the capitalist system over a few hundred years maybe, and then the Middle Ages, and I'd be worn out too.
a little argument there. I would
Oh,
argue
hit
that
me.
because whiteness has been defined around domination.
That's
Like there's a
true.
reason that Irish people and Italians and Greeks were not considered white, and it's because they had not established themselves as dominating forces in
Yeah.
the European sphere.
We
And I
move
think
those goalposts as needed too, as who's white and
we
who's not.
do, but I mean, I think we move them out of necessity. I don't think that there is less animosity on the Irish and British border. Like, I think that those identities are salient there in a way that they aren't in America. But the like our conception of whiteness, the European conception of whiteness, is, whether they want to admit it or say it out loud or not, intrinsically linked to the idea of violent domination. You cannot be white if you have not violently dominated another group of people. And that's not like a function of people, that's a function of the identity class that has been defined for them.
Yeah. Well, they keep a lot of us in the dark about it. Like there's a lot of people who
Sure.
don't understand that, oh, I'm white, but I don't feel like I'm oppressing people. But everything in the supply chain is predicated on this slave labor of children in the global South. Bananas, coffee. Yeah.
Gerald Horn has a very good hypothesis where he says that whiteness came to be from the conquest of the New World, in that you had people who in Europe were divided by mostly religion. You had, Protestants, Catholics, Jews, and
Orthodox.
Sorry?
Orthodox.
Orthodox.
You wish
right.
we made it that far, babe.
Yeah, I was gonna say they didn't really.
You wish we made it to Europe.
They
We
didn't
would
come
see
until
it
much.
to Europe.
They didn't come until much later. But when they came to the U.S., when they came to not the U.S. but the Americas rather, they had to create a new category to unify themselves against the threat of the Africans who they enslaved and the indigenous population. So all of a sudden, again, you see Jews and Catholics living together because they are unified under whiteness, the banner of whiteness, at a time when one was oppressing the other in the New World or in the Old World. Like one of the first synagogues, I think maybe the first synagogue in the US, was built by slave labor, because you have to understand that the contradictions of Europe were thrown out in large part to forge a new category of capital, to facilitate capital accumulation in the New World. And that is where whiteness, both as a colonial enterprise and as a class distinction, was created, according to George.
Yeah, I think we know that. Yeah, and in some point during colonialism, when they just needed to justify what they were doing, and then racism was like born. Then it didn't really exist to the extent ever before in the world. Is that right,
Yes and no.
Angie?
I mean, I would argue that this wasn't like a birth thing. This was definitely a capital. I maintain that capital came first. Like the hierarchies of capital came first. But I think like Eric Williams, oh
You,
my
you beat
God.
me to it. Slavery and capitalism.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you beat me to it.
Slavery
I
and
was gonna say
capitalism
that, yeah.
is the perfect companion to this argument, because he does a great job of articulating exactly how we start with the indigenous slave and the mindset of the European as he is enslaving the indigenous man, particularly of the West Indies, and how it gradually develops as an enterprise of commerce before it is an enterprise of like social class. And the social class elements are like they're consequential. They're definitely beneficial and become things that are then propped up by the system. And for like the white man sees that it's a lot better for us to just subjugate all of the Black people immediately, and then we can just enslave them a lot easier, rather than having to enslave them first and then we can subjugate them. If we make this a blanket assessment that we are superior, we give ourselves. But those are things that happen kind of through trial and error. And I think Williams articulates this and argues this brilliantly, because he does lay it out year by year and trade deal by trade deal, how the European and the British capitalist in particular is discovering the amount of profit he can reap one step at a time, and how that is what is inspiring the continued aggregation of racial sentiment until we reach the boiling point of full chattel slavery.
Yeah.
And I think you can draw a straight line from there to The Accumulation of Waste by Ali Qadri.
Absolutely.
But you have the Egyptians, though, too, but not exactly capitalist in the sense, but still utilized and exploited for
I think
the
that
end
slave
justifying the
labor
means.
was just really fundamentally different. I don't say this to like excuse it by any means, but the definition of slave labor was just really different prior to European
a slave would be freed after the Jubilee. Like there was a built-in system where there would be one, mass emancipation, and two, we know for a fact now that the ancient Hebrews were never enslaved in ancient Egypt. Even most rabbis will tell you that that was a myth. And two, the slaves were also not built. The pyramids were also not built by slaves. They were built by workers who were paid in beer.
I thought you were going to say aliens. Oh, man.
No, I'm okay.
But I think more.
Oh, no, go on.
There's that point.
No, I was just going to say, we should also be clear that when we talk about things like warfare or the institution of slavery, these were not categories that had a qualitative, like an immutable quality throughout all history. Warfare in medieval Europe was not what we see in Hollywood, where it were these like massive, big, bloody battles. The whole point was actually to lose as few men as possible. So armies would honestly most just meet in the field, spar a bit. Same thing with a lot of indigenous cultures in the Americas, where, you know, the point was to not lose people. So
because you were community-based. Those people had functional roles in your society. They didn't exist just to fight.
Like, we need to remember that warfare, as we are seeing it today, is so brutal and so bloody because there is a profit incentive.
And I think like warfare as a class of trade, warfare as an enterprise, like you can go and have a career in warfare is something that is relatively modern.
Yeah, the Roman legionaries were just people who were conscripted. You had to supply your own shields and swords, and you would get like a fixed ration. But
like the difference between like old warfare and current warfare is that currently some governments are actually profiting economically from launching wars. For
Mhm.
example, the US.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Or
and
you're not even launching wars all the time, just facilitating wars. Just like,
I
Yeah.
think that's the bizarre part. It's like even Roman slaves probably built something that ended up being like a societal socialist good for everybody else. But in our country now, it's nothing good. And it's all cruelty and it's all exploitation for a very select few instead of anything else.
but we say all this because, when we talk about, I think, as we're all Marxists or Marxist adjacent here, we're not necessarily looking at history as this universally identifiable phenomenon where humanity has this fixed state, or humans have fixed states and just things that they do. These are all socially determined by our material conditions. So I think that, it's, yes, we can talk about how it's not necessarily just tribalism that divides Lebanese society. It's the very specific historical, and like you said earlier, Chris, like the very specific historical context that created these divisions out of things like colonialism. You could go all the way back to the Crusades, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know
easy for chuds to just write that off too. It's just like, yeah, like black people have been free for what, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years? Not even, right? Like got the ability
longer
to
than
vote,
that.
Jim Crow, blah blah blah.
Well, they just
And
lost that, so
yeah,
that's the
so
history can
I
zig
was
and
gonna
zag.
say, like, we think we talk a lot about the civil rights movement, and like, guys, the voting right, like that shit didn't pass.
yeah,
Like they
there's
gave them the
no
right to
reason.
vote and then didn't pass the Civil Rights Act.
Well,
Oh,
and
yeah.
So
And we
that's
pat
what-
ourselves on the back. We cured racism and we named all the streets after Martin Luther King. So everything's fine though, right?
Well, and that's again, like when we talk about the other, I think, liberal, especially, delusion is that history moves in this progressive, march towards enlightenment, that every single step we take is a step towards a better future. There's a lot of regression that happens. Like, again, it's what Engels said, history zigs and zag. It doesn't move in a straight line to where you want it to go. And, you can see that now with how, like, I remember I was reading about Reconstruction. There was this belief that this was the start of an enlightened republic. It was called the Second American Republic because not only was the U.S. atoning for the crime of slavery, but black citizens like they were just been granted citizens, were actually getting representation in government. That was all dismantled in only 7-8 years because Republicans wanted to cut a deal to keep the presidency. So we have to remember that, in any scenario, in anything you are looking at, anything under a liberal capitalist system can be undone when you have a governing class that is, I think at the end of the day, the Civil War was won by a class alliance between the industrialists in the North and the working class of the South, who were the enslaved population going on a general strike, and the industrialists having a vested interest in dominating what was an agricultural export economy, which was, by the way, the GDP of the South was the 4th largest in the world at the time. It was the California of its day.
I think it's also, like, on that point, like, important to argue that, or important to add that it's the working class of the South who suffered following the end of the Civil War. It was the South who was abandoned following the end of the Civil War. So, like, the industrialists were there to ensure that they became the center of profit over the slave trade, over agriculture. It wasn't about, like, it wasn't the argument I'm trying to make is that it was still rooted in capital and not rooted in, like, this arc towards progression that a lot of, like, development analysts try to think about.
That's very fair. Yes, I mean, Lincoln was a capitalist. He was what they called the free labor capitalists, where they believed anyone should be able to quit a job and find another job the next day, that they're not bound by peonage or indenturitude or anything like that. But I also, just as a small aside, I thought it was interesting. I was reading about Reconstruction, and a lot of poor whites at the time did not share the animosity of like the black citizens that their ruling class did. And actually, because at the time Reconstruction also benefited poor whites, schools that
Huh.
were set up in the South also taught poor white children alongside enslaved adults or formerly enslaved adults and their children. So I thought
Wow.
that was interesting. So
That
it was a
is
radical
interesting.
experiment in, like Angie's saying, like social democracy, basically. And it frankly was probably the most historically progressive point of the United States, but it
It,
all came crashing down.
it comes
And
full circle again to the fact that you're saying, most of the problems that we have are started by, inflamed by a very small group of people who have mental problems that need to control everything.
well, mental problems and a vested interest in, safeguarding their livelihoods, like the entire gentry class of the South
Sure,
was.
I would say, but when you have more than you need to survive, that is a mental illness.
No, it does. I think it does. There are studies that show you do become basically a sociopath once you accrue a certain amount of wealth. But again, it's like it's the class conflict that you need to examine when you talk about history. It's not just ideas or tribalism. It's material actors battling for material goods.
Yeah, and going back to the thing that I was talking to, the biology and stuff and the evolution of it, is that we had the scarcity built into us early on. We learned what it was, and we had behaviors that developed as a reaction from that, and they are easily exploited and have been ever since. And this is primarily the way that fear-based propaganda is so highly functional, is because emotional things override your sense of logic. And once you're scared, you can't think straight enough to make a decision that doesn't involve killing a whole lot of people or doing something else cruel and unnecessary. Yeah.
Sorry, Mir, were you going to say something? It looked like you were about to.
I was gonna say that when it comes down to people who are becoming extra wealthy, getting richer and richer, and then that being associated with mental illness, one current prime example we can see now is Donald Trump. And the funny thing is, Iran, they basically apparently they passed by every single shot they had with Donald Trump before sending them out with psychologists. Because apparently they believe that he does suffer from mental illness.
I don't know. Well, what is it?
It was so funny
Alzheimer's?
from them.
Is it
It was so funny.
narcissistic personality disorder?
Yeah.
The thing is, I've read several. First off, there's a lot of leading theories within psychology that isolate personality disorders to empathy. Like the root of them is essentially a spectrum of empathy that we all exist on, from like incredibly empathetic to completely unempathetic sociopath, like completely devoid of any empathy. And where you like, there are psychologists that argue that even disorders like Asperger's, which is no longer necessarily, but like autism and those disorders exist on that spectrum because it has to do with how the individual interprets emotional and social information. And there are a lot of studies that have been linked to the increase of material capacity insulating the individual from exercising empathy. And it effectively operates like a skill or a muscle that you have, where the less you are required to actively perform empathy, not perform in like the performative sense of the word, but literally like enact the function in your brain, the less that your neurons have to fire empathy, the less they know how to do it. So there is a very real argument to be made that people who are able to grow up and like put their kids in private boarding schools and isolate them from any issues that the world can face and kind of like put them in this bubble where they're not forced to empathize with people unlike them in any sense of the word, it creates this inability. It creates a stunted emotional development that, not to absolve them, but literally removes that ability from them until they are either taught or like
And
until it's demonstrated.
society's beating it out of you as we speak. The whole system is geared towards beating it out of you. And now Elon Musk comes on and says empathy is a big thing that we need to destroy and stuff. And then comes out like a week later saying, oh, poor Charlie Kirk. It's like, do you want me to feel bad or do you not want me to feel bad? Make up your mind.
I have to mention this because it like fits so well. But like, if you guys aren't following Brian Johnson right now, you should be, because he is single-handedly, it's my favorite trope. It's like immortal being meets human, falls in love, and gives up their powers. That's what's happening with him. Because he's this rich billionaire who just met his girlfriend, fell really in love. And now he's like, oh my God, should I cure endometriosis because my girlfriend has it?
The power of love.
Yeah.
Is enough
He's like,
to.
oh, I haven't been with my girlfriend for 3 days. I feel like I'm going to be sick and I can't function. I feel like people really deserve to be with their loved ones and shouldn't be forcibly displaced. Like, that's the kind of conversations he's having with himself on Twitter. And I'm like, let's go. We're so close.
This is something that I need to keep up with, apparently. Okay, sure.
I'll send you.
Then you
I
have
saw that first one. He's like tweeting pictures of her at the OBGYN, and I'm like, I can't believe this is what's going to get me my cure.
But then you have the flip side of it where it's Elon and like Jeffrey Epstein who genuinely think they need to spread their seed as far as possible to better, like, again, like just some like neo-eugenicist logic, like social Darwinist logic.
We back in the day, we had things in our little tribes before we all had these big civilizations where we would anybody who tried to get one over on everybody else, these type of billionaire types who thinks that they should lead, we had like shaming. We would shame them collectively to a point where we didn't want people to rise above us. But these complex, abstract societies we live in now, and makes it really easy, and with technology, makes it really easy for these guys to usurp power, hold on to it, hoard it, and do whatever they want. Back in the day, we would just, ostracize them with silence or not share with them anymore when we were collective, when we actually needed to be collective. But
well, the word ban, I think, the very word ban etymologically is about someone who is banished, like from the in-group for
shunned,
taking too much. Yeah, for just like taking more than they needed. Like
I saw a meme on Instagram today that's like, if a monkey has 1 trillion bananas, all the other monkeys would beat him up. This is not about monkeys.
Yeah. So if we want to make the case that there's a natural order, I think socialism is what we're saying is the only.
They say if there was a monkey who stole all the bananas from all the other monkeys and hoarded them for himself, we would be trying to get science to figure out why this is happening. This is such a strange thing. But in the case of humans, we put that monkey on the cover of Forbes magazine. Yeah.
True.
That's a smart monkey. Wow. None of the other monkeys thought of that. It's like,
I mean, that monkey was born to a monkey that, had a lot of mines.
Had diamond mines in Africa.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, almost in like a more, it's like if that monkey lined up all the other monkeys, shot them in the head and took their bananas, would we be like, well, they didn't think to duck? He's a smart monkey. I don't know. That's the kind of logic that you kind of have to be okay with to exist and support capitalism.
Yeah. Be prepared to kill some monkeys. So somebody in the chat is saying 2 things. One, can you talk about climate change? Sure. And then the other thing he said was Marxism doesn't work. We need something better. And so I'll just get everybody's opinion. Mira, what do you think? I mean, are you on board with Marxism? Are you adjacent Marxism? And what's climate change is probably the last thing that you're worried about right now.
If I want to talk about climate change, I do want to talk about AI and climate change. Because all of these data centers that are fucking up every single thing, for example, like water pressure, water, electricity, like in surrounding neighborhoods, that in itself is an issue. That is cutting people off from proper infrastructure, from drinking water, and from proper electricity that they need to like sustain, to have a sustainable, not a sustainable lifestyle, but to keep living that like they used to. And then you have like drying up drinking water. You guys do realize that you need drinking water. You using ChatGPT every single day is using a lot of water. A lot of water. Some people are suffering enough. I don't think you guys want to add to the number of people who are suffering already. And then there's also climate change. It's getting very hot in Lebanon. It's getting very hot in Lebanon. It was never like this. I fear like last year, summer of last year was insane. But then when US radars were destroyed in the region, it feels like spring again. It does not feel like summer. It never was like this. So if you want to blame someone for climate change, blame capitalism. Blame capitalism, imperialism, and occupation.
And do you
That's
think
all I'm
do you
gonna
think
say.
Marxism would heal that? Would it rein in capitalism enough to save us?
We're way too in to be saved, in a way.
Yeah, I
We're
know.
way too in to be saved.
Yeah. That's my motif, I always say, but I don't it's always kind of depressing, so I don't say it all the time.
It's good to stop and like step back a bit, but in our lifetime, I think we're not gonna see any improvement. But like when it comes down to our children, our grandchildren, okay, like they might see change, but it's not in our lifetime, that's for sure. Because it's gonna take way too long to dismantle that system by itself. Way too long.
Yeah. Even with the nice new flavor of Chinese capitalism, even though it has all these great underlying things where they're reforesting and having solar panels and doing all this wonderful stuff. And I love China, but even then, I mean, we're up against so much, and I don't know how humans survive without exploitation and or consumerism or any of the stuff that we've really gotten addicted to recently. I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think? Any hope for the future?
All I'll say is Lenin wrote in 1905 that he would never see the Russian Revolution. And
I don't know about my future because
well,
Israel's trying to kill us all. So
Yeah.
I don't
well,
know.
I nothing's determined, and there are decades where nothing happens, and days where decades happen. I think we can never see the future, and I think when we talk about if Marxism fails during the Cold War, scientific studies were done in the West that showed that people living under socialist governments enjoyed higher quality of life and better health outcomes. It was just statistically and empirically proven. And I also think that, even when we talk about something like Chinese capitalism, that it's something of a misnomer in that it's part of a broader Marxist project, in that the rationale, whether you agree with it or not, is to develop the productive forces, as Marx articulated, by the Chen Yun model of keeping the bird in the cage, where the bird is the market and the cage is the state, to make sure that one doesn't get too big for the other. So, China, through its guided, very carefully planned development, has been able to bring a quality of life to a third of the world's population that has seen the greatest reduction of poverty in human history, alongside creating a fully decolonizing. Like, that's never talked about in any American sociology department, but China is probably the most successful decolonial project that has ever existed, because it literally went from being a war-torn feudal society to a superpower in the span of less than 100 years through the application of Marxism. So
he gets all excited, and I love it. He's got passion.
No, I'm just saying
he knows
that,
all this shit. I don't know this shit. He always talks, and I'm like, tell me more about the Russian Revolution.
I'm just saying, and that's not to say that China is without its contradictions and without its exploitation, because there, like we were saying at the top of this conversation, there is no such thing as a perfect and flawless political entity beyond reproach. Yeah. But we need to be honest here. Like, look at look at the political situation in China and look at what's happening in the US right now.
Yeah,
You can't tell me that Marxism is just as bad or as worse.
yeah. That's the perfect response to that comment that I saw. So there you go, Joe. I think that's his name, Joe. What do you think, Angie? Hope for the future? What's the story there? What gives you hope?
Chris.
I'm not hopeful for the U.S.
I think we have the same
Little-
thought.
Okay, I will say
A little bit of weed and a little bit of food, and I'm all right.
I want to make the point on climate change that really isn't discussed enough. My background's in development, so like development sucks. No one studied development. Stop studying. No one studied development ever again. But the issue we run into with climate change is that even now at the meetings of the UN, but from like the earliest point where world leaders were willing to acknowledge climate change, the direction of action is pointed towards the developing, quote unquote, developing nations who are also bearing the brunt of victimization of climate change. So the people who have least benefited from the overall global development of the past century, the people who have least benefited from industrialization, from all the mechanisms that have produced climate degradation and climate change, they are also the ones being asked to essentially stunt their state and social and like infrastructure development for the like pathologized sake of like not cutting down more trees in South America, as if cutting down trees and deforestation is the key principal root of climate change in the year of our Lord 2026. There's this like obfuscation of climate change around corporateness of it to press it into a state issue. And I think that when we talk about climate change from the perspective of like, I, a delegate of Argentina, I, a delegate of Lebanon, we lose the ability to like accuse the perpetrators of this global crime, which is global corporations and the states that facilitate their work, but it is global corporations that benefit from South America and Africa and the Middle East being underdeveloped so that they can exploit those regions and continue to extract and continue to facilitate increased degradation of the environment while also not providing any of the benefits to those states. So what we need to understand is a world where we start to reverse climate change is a world where the US starts to look a lot more like all the countries that Donald Trump likes to call shithole countries. It's a world where the West and the developed North starts to actually scale back the things that it thinks it needs to survive in order for the entire globe to reach the same level of equitable quality of life and development that is sustainable for us to then examine, okay, how can we consume more without losing sustainability? And that is the point that people in the West, like the most devoted climate activist in the West, is not willing to live without AC.
Oh, absolutely. Or eat meat. 20% of the Earth's greenhouse
Eating meat
emission
isn't
is
like the
animal
fundamental
agriculture.
issue with climate change, though. That's another thing. Is
It's
like there are all,
it is a big
it's
part
a
of
big
it.
one, but it's the overconsumption of it. Most of that overconsumption becomes waste because we're not able to consume it. It's
You're opening up a can of worms.
Well, no, but I hear what she's like. Mira can
indigenous
attest.
cultures have consumed meat sustainably for centuries and millennia in ways that have integrated that use into the entire society and could like used every element of the animal that is being used. And they've also, by the way, cultures have done that with dead humans.
Or
medical cannibalism is a thing that was normalized in society for centuries.
when she says that we consume every single part of an animal, we literally eat its intestines and head.
And we're not
So
doing
good, by
this
the way,
to
do not
animals.
still try it.
We're not doing this to animals in like a industrialized systematic way. This is a farmer like raising an animal, caring for it, knowing what he's feeding it, bringing it to like the natural end of its life cycle, and then slaughtering it. In our cultures require the most humane way possible.
So
I don't know what y'all were doing over there.
Cultural values, don't have to be rigid. they don't have to be conservative in the way that if you don't need to do something, that it doesn't have to happen. And the idea is that we, because it's a cultural custom from before times, that we can overlook the cruelty that we're causing to animals. And the other thing is, that's not a solution for a lot of the world. Like, so 99% of the meat in the United States is factory farmed. I know that's true about a lot of the world. What we overlook is that the nutritional, what happens when you grow soybeans to feed to a cow and then to get the, the nutrition out of it in the system that we have, not to say in the indigenous system, but we lose it's a 10 to 1 loss of calories and protein when you can just eat the soybeans it's yourself. So we're losing efficiency 10 to 1.
I won't argue with you in terms of like the ethics or the the nutritional element, but
like an animal doesn't want to die. Like he doesn't want to die.
That I'm making is
and dairy cows don't want to be separated from their children, and they forcibly inseminate them and then steal the baby away and then take the milk.
But that's again, the result of
there's a better way.
Industrialization of consumption. My point, though, all of that's bullshit and shouldn't be happening.
Most people live in cities and can't have a goat or a cow on hand to get their.
Even with all of that, animal consumption is not the leading cause of climate change and environmental degradation.
It's high. It's like 18 to 20%.
Of water usage.
Water usage and greenhouse gases, namely cows, and the methane caused from not just their farts and stuff, but their shit and because they're ruminant animals, and we have so many of them. Livestock now, the biomass of livestock like grossly outweighs all wildlife and all humans. It dwarfs 80% of the by weight is livestock, that we're breeding these animals into existence simply to exploit them. And I think if you want to be morally consistent when it comes to equality and liberation and stuff, you have to apply these to animals. And the other thing is that legumes, nuts, seeds, grains, and beans, these suck nitrogen into the air and can replenish the soil in a way. And we could free up so much land if we just started to eat beans instead of meat, because the protein is the same. You get your iron from, vegetables, and most people can live happily without killing an animal. And the thing is, I love animals, and I'll always, I took acid and I had a thing with my dog, and I love my dog to death. Yeah, my Habibi, Kelbi. Yeah, that's my dog.
I want to just point out and say there's a difference, though, between the consumption of an American meat eater. Hi, buddy. There's a difference between an American level of consumption and that in especially the, Swana region.
It's tiered. It's different levels.
But the bean point doesn't really make sense, because in our culture, we have a lot of dishes that are just bean based.
Well, you're geographically, you're already halfway there. A lot of indigenous people are already halfway there with their bean dishes. The other thing is that the health benefits of legumes are also insanely good. That they have less saturated fat. All meat has saturated fat. It increases inflammation markers in the body. You have, various diseases that come from it, cardiovascular risk. 40% of human beings are super absorbers of cholesterol, which means just eating a little bit of meat can.
The real issue that you're going to run into, if we're going to keep this ethically consistent, is that to prescribe everyone become vegan or just, to kind of make this a prescriptive argument.
No.
Well, I just want to make this point. Ignores the fact that it is putting the onus on the people who don't have access to those things. Because Lebanon and Syria have had the lowest yields in agriculture due to the war. I would argue due to the war.
Plant life? Well, tell me what plant life that the livestock are eating that they do it that way rather than beans. And also remember that beans,
literally whatever they can is the thing. It's so much easier to feed an animal whatever you can.
We used to raise chickens.
Chickens are one of the more efficient animals. But the other thing is beans versus meat. Meat spoils faster than any other food. And it becomes very toxic. Let me finish. It becomes very toxic very fast. beans stay good forever. They're dry.
The
They can be
majority of the
stored.
soil across the world is no longer capable of supplying life because the imperial powers have bombed the shit out of it. Like olive trees are not producing yield, lemon trees are not producing yield. The crops that we would sustain ourselves with, would we like, you know, move
In your
away
region,
from
they're
it, are
in the
not like
And Lebanon, like we're going through an
generally,
agricultural crisis right now because of Israel.
Well, they're
I mean,
generally
specifically
speaking,
targeting agricultural fields, right? The whole point is
Yeah.
to salt the earth, basically.
Yeah.
agriculture everywhere, agricultural practices in the US and most of the Americas are not sustainable because they don't employ turnover. So they're agitating the soil and then reaching a point where the crops, if we were to sort of like lean on that narrative, I only make this argument to say that like we can't be thinking about absolution when we're thinking about survival, because
It's not about
you
it's not about absolution. It's about recognizing scientifically proven ways to live more efficient as human beings on Earth.
Also,
When stripping away, you know, what we the you know, I understand that the United States makes up 2% of the population of Earth, but consumes
and how much
25%
of
of its
meat consumption?
resources.
How much, if
Uh,
it's like 2% of the
They
population of Earth,
so
how much of
China,
that is like the meat
we
production?
consume about we consume twice as much meat as China does per
And do you
person.
think that that's because the individual is actually inclined to select meat? Or do you think that that's because it is a culture that provides you 6 aisles of meat at the grocery store and every entree is
Well,
meat focused and all of those things?
China's also the same, so you
That's
can't
not
really.
true. That's not true. As someone who's like studied and lived
Well,
and like spent
China
time in
has meat
Asia,
though, but China
they
has
have
meat.
meat, but all of our dishes internationally are not
They
meat-centric
have
dishes.
the largest pig farm in the world. It's the first vertical slaughterhouse pig farm that's like a skyscraper that's full of pigs that they breed into existence to kill. So they eat everything. The Yulin Dog Festival is famous for eating and cooking dogs. It's gotten less popular in recent years, but nevertheless, they came from a culture of eating every animal all the time because they lived also through such scarcity. But what I'm saying is we're moving to a new era where we have to think differently to solve the problems that we've created, whether with capitalism or just in sheer numbers or whatever the problems are. Nevertheless, we have to be flexible and have rational, debates on whether or not we can switch to an all legume plant-based diet and a sustainable agriculture diet. You know, my wife is in organic agriculture. She does pest protection. I worked in organic agriculture for years. I grew weed in Humboldt County. I'm fairly keen on soil health and fungi and, you know, growing mushrooms in my back room. I'm very hip to this idea, but I don't think that, you know, cultural values or anything, cultural traditions should override
This
sensible,
is
healthy, healthy for the world, healthy for your body, and healthy for the animals
I have
decision.
one last
Well-
point that I will make to this credit. Like ecological predation is a thing that is required to maintain balance, and humans, whether we want to like no, let me finish this time. Humans have never been herbivores. Humans have perpetually, and there are many pockets.
That's not true.
particularly-
That's not
Humans
true.
have never been herbivores. There are
That
no
we share our DNA with bonobos who are 99% plant-based, and
that is not a singular argument. We also share like 67% of our DNA with bananas, Chris.
I don't know about that. I don't know
I
about
do.
that.
Go ahead and look it up. I think
I
that
actually
listen, you and I are in 100% agreement that the industries around meat and animal consumption are inherently corrupt and should not exist. That is completely true.
do you think that do you think you need meat to survive?
I don't think you need meat to survive. I also don't think you need milk to survive. I don't think you need sunflower seeds to survive. I don't think you need tomatoes to survive. I think that humans and most complex mammals have evolved to require a like rounded need of nutrients. I also think we have evolved a specific place within an ecological system. I don't think we know what that place is anymore.
It doesn't look
humans.
good. Whatever place we're
No.
in, it seems to be have a lot of bad byproducts.
Well, I'm just saying, like, there's a really insane overpresence and like overpopulation of deer throughout America that's causing
That's
many.
not, yeah, but that's not
No. I'm
enough
saying
deer
this
for
not to say
everybody.
we should be out hunting deer. I'm saying this because like
That's what Ted
Americans have
Nugent
hunted the
said.
shit
Everyone
out of
go out and
wolves.
kill Bambi's mom.
Yeah.
Right?
No, like this is the issue is
Wildlife.
that people,
Here, I'll bring up the
people-
thing. Yeah.
guy, Chris,
Also, Chris,
we
I do
all
want
love
to comment on a
animals. No
point that
one
you
is
said.
against you.
Wait, Mira, go
What'd you
on,
say,
Mira.
Mira?
What'd you say?
I want to comment on a point that Chris talked about, which is just like not being able to keep meat as fresh as other products. Well, fun fact, meat here is so fresh because we don't have the same systems as you that we eat it raw. We do have raw meat dishes like raw kibbe, raw liver, and all of that stuff.
How did
Really
the
good.
I know meat's delicious. That's not the question here. How does the animal feel about it though? Right before you kill him, is he
They don't
worried?
really feel stressed
how does
because
the-
like
How does the
most people
gazelle feel
here,
right before the lion kills it? Like, I think that we
Do
are
we
able.
make?
Listen,
Well, we're not
you
lions.
by nature of having been raised in the West, I think I need to say this. You by nature of having been raised in the West have grown up in a world where all of these choices, these ethical choices were in front of you and were options. You've had the privilege of living without having to know that you are committing harm onto another animal. That is a privilege that honestly has not existed for the majority of human existence. People have, like human beings, have fundamentally existed within a natural environmental ecosystem that revolves around life and death. We're
Yeah.
not, you're the one who makes the we're animals argument. We're animals and we
But
omnivores.
aren't we? We don't like ethnocentrism, right? Ethnocentrism is a bad thing. But so why then would we have anthropocentrism, where we believe that humans
This
are the
isn't
center of the universe,
anthropocentrism
or that
because I
we
believe in the
we
lion's right
we
to
water
kill and eat
down?
just as much.
But we're not lions, right? We're smart enough. We're smarter than lions, and we have options. The lion doesn't have an
You
option.
have options. Me in Syria, Mira in Lebanon, maybe doesn't have options. You
Well,
have
then I'm
options.
not talking
This
about those people.
argument-
I'm talking about
But-
the people who don't have access to beans. You're off the hook. Fine.
Well, it's not about having access to beans, Chris. I think that when we talk about making real change, we need to be realistic about what we're asking people. And if we're going to ask everyone to live off canned beans from now till the end of time, we can say hello to Benjamin Netanyahu, our Lord and Overlord of the United States and the majority of the world. We need to have a real understanding of like what the human condition is for people who are suffering, because the people that you're asking to convert are the people who are suffering. They're the people who are making choices on what they eat based on immediate need and economic ability.
I'll go you even one further. For me to see a child suffering because of war, because of, Western hegemony or whatever, the horrible things that Israel does, and all the crying children and all the sorrow and all the suffering and stuff, I don't see the big difference between that and the suffering of an animal. You have a complex sentient being who knows he's alive, who thinks, loves, cries, feels, lives and dies, loves his young. And we're
one
assuming
of them is being tortured without end by bombs that they can't see, and the other one is experiencing, in most cultures, a like really quick end to a normal life that is happening like for a purpose to serve a need and being used to completion. I think that these are not equivalent.
But don't you hear what you're saying? Like this, Israel could say the same thing.
I would feel a little iffy about being compared to an animal being slaughtered like that for food. I would just say that.
But you're justifying it. You're justifying it. You're saying because of this and because of that, they have to die. You're making an excuse why this animal has to die when it doesn't necessarily have to die.
I'm establishing a like differentiation that will make or break your ability to move anything forward.
I refuse to be somebody who doesn't try to empathize with all living creatures and all the people, all the animals that exist with us. Biodiversity is very important. It's not survival of the fittest, like, okay, humans win and then we're supposed to be stewards of the earth.
That's not what I'm arguing though.
I'm trying to paint a larger picture about moral consistency, right?
But like it's a cycle of life though.
Me too. I'm
trying to and you can say these type of things in regards to African children too. Like you could definitely apply these excuses to killing African children or enslaving. Say it's the natural way. It's how it's always been done. We've been doing it for
That's
hundreds of
not
years.
true.
Like one is
Chris,
done out
that
of
is not
necessity and
true.
one is
Ancient
done
man
out of
was not-
imperialism and genocide.
Well, you keep saying
They're not
necessity, but
comparable.
I just proved that that's not true because the majority of people can get by on beans, and we
Human
can actually
society
create.
has not
We can
functioned.
create.
But like a lot of people cannot eat beans because of medical reasons.
For nutrition, like
How many?
after 10
Okay,
years.
is that a real? She just said a real scientific fact. Many people cannot eat beans because. Okay, tell me more. Tell me what study this is that people can't.
Girl,
eat
I have
them.
no idea. I just have relatives who cannot
I
eat
have
legumes
three
because they
brothers.
get
Two
really
of them are
bloated.
allergic to legumes.
Well,
I'm
they
not a
get
scientist.
bloated. It's not deadly. It's not a deadly thing.
Two
That's
of
gonna
my
kill.
brothers
They
no,
can't
it
eat.
gets
in the
bad.
hospital with anaphylaxis from legumes. What do you
I
mean?
think-
Well, those people are off the hook. But the majority, I've looked this up before because I've had
Sweetheart, Chris, hear
so
me
many
out.
debates.
How are
about
they
this.
supposed to get
There
protein
are
in?
no studies that
What
can
do you think is in
validate the
legumes?
fact.
Oh my god.
There are
Yeah,
no
exactly. If
studies.
they cannot eat legumes, you cannot ban them from eating meat. That's what I'm saying. How are they supposed to get protein in?
I think,
Protein comes in legumes. It's
but
in
again,
there.
I think, Chris,
That's what I'm.
you're flipping the Western paradigm of domination on its head, which I understand. That's the antithesis. But like Angie's saying, you have to recognize the specific material conditions that certain people in parts of the world that have been dominated by imperialism and capitalism are coming from, and why a goat that they've raised is frankly, in some cases, the only real option they have for nutrients next to like Angie's saying, what do you do when you are living in a place where the soil has been tainted after years of bombardment? Like,
Sure,
what do
but all this is like really counter.
But-
This is a very political lens to view it through. I'm just viewing it through like a morality thing. Like you're choosing to end their life out of what you say is a necessity, but has been proven that it's not.
To
And
you, it's been proven.
But
no,
what
it's
you
just
do- what
science.
would you-
But
if
what
you
we're
were-
doing, we're making assumptions that they don't
And
value
when there
their
is a
life
long
or
form study, when there
you're,
is a
you're
large
making
and long
suffering.
form
You're
study,
creating
that, like,
suffering. That's it. You're creating suffering. That's all. That's
Chris,
it.
just hear us out, because the suffering that's more large and looming is the suffering of like the 7 billion people who are mainly forced to exist this way.
So
and
they
forced-
suffer more.
Please let me finish. Please let me finish, because you've made a lot of points that are mostly circular, and I really want to articulate this. You're coming from a point of morality that is the Western point of morality, where you get to like, you're not doing this because you hold
Veganism
morality. Let me
isn't
finish. Allow me
veganism
to
isn't
finish.
Western. It comes
Allow
from
me to
ahimsa.
finish.
It's
Allow
do
me to
not
finish.
harm.
I'm not arguing that the harm is like isolated. I'm arguing that this stance that to kill an animal is inherently immoral. It is coming from the origin, like it's coming from the humanist ethics of the US that is more willing to empathize with a dead dog on camera than a human being dead elsewhere. That's not what you're doing, but that's where this argument lies at its root. For us to empathize en masse and argue that the primary point of contradiction right now is our consumption of animal products, which has happened by the human species since the genetic origin of our existence, is a moral obfuscation of all the other injustices that humans are facing at the hands of people who are subjugating them and treating them and forcing them to live in ways that they would not opt to themselves. If we someday come to a world where a large N study that exists over the span of 20 years, because frankly, you as a man can talk about eating legumes. There are serious concerns in women eating soybeans for their entire life and still being able to reproduce normally. So
That's
when
not
those studies
true
exist
either.
that show me full societies of humans, not individuals of a society, full societies can subsist as vegans with no deficits, then we can talk about this like moral need to eradicate something that has existed in society
First
since
of
its
all,
genetic form.
there's a lot to unpack there. There are 1.2 billion vegetarians in the world right now.
Vegetarian is not
1.2
vegan.
Right. It's just without the dairy, right?
Vegetarian technically permits you any animal product that is not a meat. Broth, any like bone marrow. I've been vegetarian, I've been pescatarian, I've been vegan. So
I don't
speak
know
of
any
this, like, from a
vegetarians
very-
that have bone marrow. I don't know. You don't eat any animal parts, but you can have dairy. That's what
You can
a
have dairy
vegetarian
and
is.
eggs. As I say,
Exactly.
I've been many iterations of all of these. So I empathize deeply with like the arguments you're making towards animals. But I think that to then prescribe them on a global scale is leaning towards white feminism in application. Like that's what it's.
India, this is where they say ahimsa. This is the religion there. They say, which means harm no one. This is where a lot of the stuff originated from on its own, incongruent to what's happening in the Western world right now, which is the rise of veganism in the last 15 years. They have been doing it for a long time.
How much butter and dairy is used in Indian and subcontinent cuisine, Chris? How much
We're
butter
not talking
and
about
dairy
that.
and
I'm talking
eggs
about
are you-
9% to 14% of the Indian population is vegan. And that's driven easily because, first of all, they're a legume culture. They love lentils and they respect cows. It's part of their religion.
Why do they love lentils?
I don't know, because it probably grows easily, as opposed to Lebanon, which
What is the British history of loving lentils, Chris? Why do you think these cultures subsist on the bare minimum? Why do you think our cultures? Why do you think Syrian,
Well, that's the
Lebanese,
thing. Now you're making an argument. Now you're making an argument that meat is healthier than lentils. Now you're making an argument.
A lot of our dishes are legume based.
We need to eat meat, even though it's not healthy. But you're saying it is healthier.
Chris, you're speaking over us a little bit, and you're also putting words into our mouths. That's not
a lot of our dishes are legume based because of poverty.
Because we couldn't afford meat. Because there wasn't meat to be had.
Okay, I understand that. Which one is healthier scientifically, meat or lentils?
None of us are doctors, so none of us get to say that, and it's not material either. Because
what's better for the environment? What's more sustainable?
We don't have the
I'm not a
luxury of
scientist.
thinking about what's better for us when we're being shot and bombed and killed, when we're being subjugated and ICE is being sent onto us, when we're being killed in the streets for being black, when we're being bombed in Iran, Lebanon,
right?
Yemen,
but you keep coming back to these things, which I know you're very emotional about, but it doesn't talk about like you're saying that your suffering is paramount to the suffering of an animal.
That's not what I'm saying, Chris. You are the one.
How many sentient land animals are killed every year versus people killed? Anybody want to take a guess?
How many people are killed? You tell me. How many people are killed?
8.3 billion land animals are killed every year.
And who is
and the majority was by who?
Consuming them, or is it the people trying to sell
let me look it up, because I'll let you know. Hang on, let me look it up. I'll give you both numbers.
Also, in the meantime, while you're looking it up, I do want to point out that logic cannot be applied globally. It cannot be applied on a global scale. For example, Mongolia, they depend on meat because they cannot create produce.
Those people are excluded, like indigenous people in like the Eskimos. Obviously,
so why are you making an argument that excludes people? What is the point of this argument? Who are you talking to? Are you talking to Americans?
I ran a story already about how Eskimos are actually having to switch to plant-based diets because there's no more fishing, because we ruined that, and they can't hunt beluga whales and they can't eat the stuff that they've always eaten. So even in places in Africa where there's now when something changes and the wildlife that they consisted on doesn't exist anymore because we've ruined the biosphere, then they're pivoting and eating beans, lentils, whatever,
which are more expensive for them and causing additional fossil fuel usage because they have to ship all of that in. My question to you is, who are you talking to when you make these prescriptions then? Because every time we bring up a context, you're like, that doesn't apply to them. So who does it apply to?
What do you mean?
Because the morality in question would apply to everyone if it was an issue of morals, but it's not.
Well, like
it's
I said, most people.
Your ability
No, you're pointing out. You're pointing out very specific things. Eskimos who live in rarely arid regions and Mongolians and stuff like this. Yes, clearly, like there's a lot of people who it'll be more difficult for them to do it. But I'm talking about most of the world. Most of the world who live in cities, who would have access to beans, which we can create a huge surplus of because they can stay good in its dry form for 10 years while meat needs refrigeration.
Which almost everyone has.
Not, yeah, like we
That's
were
not
saying.
true. Now that's exclusionary because Africa, most of the world that's wasted in the world is because of Africa not having access to proper food processing and
What's the meat
storage
consumption like in
facilities.
Africa? Can you look that up for me? Can you look
Sure,
up for me? No, like,
I'm trying to look up
well,
things.
what I'm kind of
You
interested
do
in, Chris,
realize
is
that
like,
not the entirety of Africa is how Western media shows it, right?
let's talk about how that demographic breaks down. Those 8 point something billion animals that are killed, where are they being killed? Who's consuming them? Who's doing that killing? Is it the consumers or is it the people trying to sell them to you? And maybe those are the questions of morality we should be making instead of putting the onus of morality on the consumer the same way that we did throughout the entire 2010s when we were convincing people that them recycling their cans
It's
was
not
going to
the
somehow
onus.
keep the ozone
The
layer.
onus. It's not the onus of morality. The cans aren't animals. Animals are living beings who are sharing this earth with us
I'm not
as we're
comparing
hurtling
the
through
cans
space.
to the animal, Chris. That's a complete misunderstanding of what I just said.
Well,
I'm saying
you're saying we shouldn't have to change our dietary habits
that's not what I'm
because
saying either. I'm saying that us as
that's not
people
going to
who are
help us.
politically active should not be making prescriptions based on what people need to currently intake into their body to survive. We should be making prescriptions based on the corporations putting options in front of them. If you are opposed to the abuse of animals, you should ideally be opposed to the overconsumption of animals, because that is the pathway to eventually getting us to see that we don't need to be harming these animals, maybe to the extent, maybe at all. But to kind of jump directly into this, like we are all committing the same amount of violence that is being committed in
But
Gaza or Lebanon.
I didn't say that. I didn't say
That
that
is
at all.
a
I just
really
said,
similar point that you made earlier.
But
well,
I want to
violence
add
is
something to
violence. I
Angie's
wouldn't make
point.
I don't make wide distinctions about violence. I think violence is violence. That's all.
I want to
But
add
it's
something to
not.
Angie's point. Like,
And
we do not mass
exploitation.
produce
See,
meat.
you guys are saying that these are lesser beings. That's all you're saying.
It's
That's
not
not what
that
we're saying
We're
at
not
all.
saying
That's
that they're
what
lesser
you are
beings.
interpreting from us. I would argue that we're
Well, then
all
you don't want the
equal beings.
equality. You don't want equality.
Okay,
for
so
them.
you're
You don't want
arguing
them to
that
live. You're
a
against killing children, but you're okay
Chris,
with the killing of the animals.
Chris,
That's
is a
it's
gazelle a lesser
okay.
being to a lion? Chris, is a gazelle a lesser being to a lion?
No.
No. So why
So why does the
is
lion
an
eat it?
But
animal
again, you
killed
bring
by
up
a
the
human
lion. You
at
bring
the
you.
rate of consumption?
Why
at
are
the
you
rate of
bringing up the
necessary
lion and gazelle? The lion does not have a choice.
But neither
And
do people
the
in the global
majority-
south. That's what they're trying to tell you. The people
Nor
who
do
not
most
have-
people.
It's
Most
way too
people
early in the
don't
morning
like-
for this.
You come from Germany, and I know that like food deserts are less common in Europe, having recently experienced it. Most Americans are not running to like their nearest grocery store and grabbing a $1.25 can of beans because they're in a food desert. Maybe you don't have a car, and the closest thing they can access is whatever they can access. So even the people who like have the luxury of quote unquote choice that you want to talk to, like the things on the rungs on their ladder, meat and the harm to animals is all the way up here, and they're thinking about surviving next week. Like they're thinking about paying the water bill and not dying of dehydration. I think that when we talk about harm, we can talk about harm, but then to prescribe it like that is, I would argue personally, like disrespectful to a wide variety of cultures across the entire world who have sustainably consumed meat and continued to foster relationships with their environments and their ecosystems that are very like, I'm sorry, animals weren't running away from the Native Americans terrified. The buffalo were still very much living in those regions because they weren't being killed, like they weren't being tortured and killed. There was a necessary harm happening, but it was a part of a cycle of life that we're intended to understand as a part of nature. Not white phosphorus bombs being dropped on children for white supremacy.
They kill most meat. All the meat in the world.
Don't say they, because that's not who I'm talking
it's a
about. I'm
factory
talking
farm.
about
The
the majority of cultures
the
who do
majority
this
of the word.
sustainable.
Whoa, that's a small amount. That's a small amount.
The majority of cultures would actually do this sustainably. Yes,
but the majority of human beings,
Western culture of corporate consumption requires surplus in order to dictate price. So until we understand that the issue is not necessarily like the individual conviction and choice, like I'm going to eat meat every day because I want to stick a fork in it. That's not what's happening here. Like there's a misappropriation of morality occurring.
Especially when it comes down to corporate culture, like here in Lebanon, most people will not buy meat from grocery stores. They just get meat directly from the butcher, from the local butcher, who like
And the
butchers like
grocery
one cow a day, and then like
And like Mira, you tell me, how big is the meat section at your grocery store? The nearest one.
one aisle.
One aisle, and that aisle is
Less
5
than-
feet, guys.
Exactly.
You're not
It's
talking
not
a
even an
Walmart
aisle.
aisle of like. So this issue is one that exists because of overconsumption, not because people eat meat as human beings. That's the critical point that I think is like the nexus. If we were in a world where there was no overconsumption and we were still seeing these issues and like animals were still being abused and the water like all of that, we could be having a much more serious conversation. But I think we don't have as strong of a leg to stand on when we talk about it from this very, very like Western centric position.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Western centric, since I pointed out that there's a lot of people all over the world picking up on the vegan lifestyle, but
the
It's not
idea,
picking up on it.
To
They
each
don't
their own.
moralize it though.
it's not about
like,
being, it's morality, or it's out of necessity for the environment, or it's out of necessity
we've very much
for your
focused on
health.
morality.
Well, there's three things. It's good for the animal not to die because, of course, he probably wants to live. And then it's good for the environment because we're, like I said, transferring proteins and calories in an inefficient way. And we're, nitrogen runoff and everything else that comes with the
overconsumption, not the
United
consumption.
States. 99% is factory farm in the United States. In the United Kingdom, it's 85%. In the European Union, it's 80%. In China, it's 70%. That's already a lot of the world factory farming meat. And you live in the United States, meaning any meat that you eat, it probably came from a factory farm. It lived and died in the dark, and you paid an evil corporation to get nutrition. That you could have got from it. The other thing is, if the subsidies came off of meat, a package of ground beef would cost $30 a pound. The United States government subsidizes these companies to keep this inefficient because capitalists like Tyson Chicken and Cargill, they actually scrape tons of money off the top out of this inefficient system and get subsidies from the government and then overprice it and then let you clog your arteries with a dead carcass of an animal who lived and died in the dark. Now, to me, that's something that I can avoid by eating curry and beans and chickpeas and hummus and falafel. I can do that.
But you're speaking to a very specific reality that isn't the only one.
Why I've interviewed hundreds of vegans from all over the world, and none of them give me any excuses about why they couldn't take a little bit extra time.
Chris, this is not
I've
about
heard them
excusing
all.
personal
I
choice.
have. I've
this
heard
is
them
about
all.
your prescription upon the globe. It's not about an individual saying
it's just some advice that I think that people should consider. That's all.
But not everybody can heed your advice. I think that's what they're saying is not.
I'm well aware that most human beings aren't interested in vegans.
It's not that they're not interested. It's just that they are materially bound by their circumstances, dictated by the exploitative realities of capitalism and imperialism and colonialism that prevent them from doing something like, farming soybeans en masse.
And to speak against like the issue in this way that's like roundabout, like if you're against factory farming, be against factory farming and talk to people about factory farming and about shopping local, not pushing the extreme.
Africa is already, the majority of it already vegan. They've meat is a luxury there because it goes back for a long time. Culturally, that's what they grow. They grow.
Because meat is a luxury. Because our cultures understood.
Fufu and cassava in West Africa, pop and beans in Southern Africa, sukumi wiki, collard greens, maize meal.
The
These are
majority,
healthy foods.
excuse me,
Africans are healthier than Westerners.
Let her
So what's
talk.
the
Chris.
Excuse
argument?
me,
Let her
Chris.
talk. Let her talk. Let her
the
talk.
majority of indigenous cultures treat meat as a luxury for the specific purpose that you were not meant to be slaughtering 15 cows to live out your week. Meat was a luxury and is a small portion. Most of our meals, most of the most famous foods that we eat, rolled grape leaves, anything that's stuffed, you're using a small amount of mincemeat with a ton of vegetables, rice, spices. You're making a little bit of meat go a long way, in addition to other protein sources and things like that, because we understood it to be a luxury, but a part of what we were doing as caretakers of an ecology. If like, I don't know if it's not like
But
predators
we're-
exist in the wild. There is a natural level of predation that needs to exist. I'm not saying that what exists right now in terms of human consumption.
But we became meat eaters over the course of our evolution. If we
That's
came
not true.
99%,
Chris, you cannot say that. You
I'll
cannot
look
say
it
that
up.
on here like it's fact, because that is not
90%.
evolutionarily established, nor is it
It is.
anthropologically true within the
What?
history of like Homo sapiens.
Okay, then
You can
send
talk
me
about
something.
bonobos, but that is a genetic evolution that differentiates them.
Okay,
really
tell me. You
explicitly.
know what happened. When did we start eating meat? Because I wrote a book about
I
this.
the most anthropologists argue that from the origin point of Homo sapiens, we can find evidence of the consumption of meat, primarily through the indications of the ability to cook, the ability from the moment that we had fire, anthropologists have established that we were cooking meat on it. And we were using everything that we could from the animal as human beings. Every part of it was incorporated with reverence. This was not an act done. I think, really,
I'm gonna read this out. Okay, the actual hard scientific data from modern evolutionary anthropology, the stable isotope analysis, and paleobotany tells a completely different story than the myth that paleo lifestyle gurus and corporate meat lobbyists love to push. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, meat was a sporadic, highly variable supplement, and our ancestors were
That's
overwhelmingly
literally what we're describing,
plant-based.
Chris, my sweet summer child. Let me finish a point before you read the next thing from your Google search. I beg you. Because
This was
what
notes
we're
from my book.
describing, what we are
This is very
describing,
entertaining.
sporadic, occasional meat consumption.
Wonder what-
I've been in so many arguments with humans about this because humans hate this topic because it makes them
This
feel
is-
bad
But
and they
again-
get super
Listen,
defensive.
I don't feel bad, Chris.
and-
I don't feel bad. I have no
Okay.
guilt right now.
Okay,
You're the one
I
who
believe
is
you.
like changing your perspective each time. Because when we isolate morality, you switch to you switch to the ecological aspect. When we switch
Well, there's
to
three
that
things.
aspect,
There's three things I
when
bring
we
up
switch to that
always.
aspect, you isolate back to morality.
Right, because you cannot defeat the three arguments of veganism. It's good for the
But
cow.
none of them
it's
are
good for the
following through.
planet.
Have you noticed that each time we defeat one, you have to like opt to another? I'm not arguing against veganism.
Because
I'm
you
arguing
have to
against
defeat
your
the three.
point here. No,
You
you're
have
not
to have-
making three.
It's
Chris.
3 points. It's for the animals good, it's for the good of the earth, the efficiency of the agriculture, and it's good for your health. That's the other thing that I
None
probably
of them
don't
have
know
been
anything
like,
about.
established, though. You have not been able to like scientifically establish any of these. And I
Really?
argue it would be impossible for you to scientifically establish.
You would
that
just,
it's
you know what
efficient.
you would need to do? You would just need to sit down and listen to me for like 6 hours, and I would tell you and show you the studies, because I've combed through the studies and hadn't, talked to the nutritionists and looked at the, the opposition and everything. Like, I put a lot of work into this.
When you say, sweetheart, Chris, I'm begging you to please just like listen to me, because one nutritional study is not going to dictate.
I'm saying a meta-analysis of thousands.
Where are
of
they?
studies.
Where are they based? Where are they based? Do they
randomized
look at
control
demographic
trials?
studies?
So yes, and
I don't actually have like the time to sit down because it is.
I know, the holy grail of studies is meta-analysis and randomized control trial and twin studies. And when you have twins and you put them on different diets, that's the best way that you can tell what the difference is. And they fed one meat and a sensible pescatarian, whatever meat diet, and fed the other one a plant-based diet. And they found lower inflammation markers, lower chronic disease, lower risk of hypertension. These are
And you don't think that that could have
studies.
anything to do with all of the issues that you just talked about with factory farmed meat? You don't think that that could play a role in the level of health outcomes?
What's the difference between a goat in Africa that indigenous people slaughter?
You are the one who just talked about all of the things wrong with factory farming and all of the things that they are adding into our meats.
But I didn't specify. I didn't specify the difference though. And one of the differences, and you're right that there is differences. You'll have growth hormone in cows. They're beefed up with corn instead of being able to graze on an open pasture. These are distinctions that you could make and say the meat maybe is not as healthy, but really it's the same ingredients. What you have is
and you've been able to establish that through, and those studies, they all do detailed testing on the meat in question. And they do twin studies where they feed them different types of meat. There are so many variables here. Chris, I'm a scientist. You can't pull this shit on me. I am a scientist.
My wife's a scientist. She's been vegan 16 years.
And I don't dispute her. The thing is, you are making prescriptions across populations that have fundamentally different gut biomes and nutritional needs. You're talking about meta studies. Where are those studies based? Because I know they weren't based in Iran. I know they weren't based in Peru.
These are global.
I know that they weren't based in Mongolia.
But again, it boils down to let Mira, you were going to say something. Please go on.
I was only going to say that I'm going to eat a shawarma every single day in Chris's honor.
This is what they do then. Then they say, fuck this guy. I'm going to eat twice as many animals just to spite this person for trying to be less cruel to our fellow earthlings.
The matter, Chris, it's no one is arguing from a
just
moral
put yourself on a higher
standpoint.
moral pedestal for
No,
nothing.
here's the
For
thing.
being
It's,
able to
everybody says
Yeah.
vegans think they're better than everybody, but the truth is we're not. This is the exact reason why we're vegans, because we know we're not better than others.
You're vegan. Okay.
You're behaving. You put that out there as if to denigrate
Makes sense.
the inability
No, I'm
for
trying to say,
others.
when people talk about liberation, when people talk about exploitation and stuff, I think that the right thing to do is to be consistent. And it doesn't take anything away from the people who can do it. If you can't do it, don't do it. But for the people that can do it and to not do it, that's moral inconsistency. And these inconsistency is what loses debates. You have to be consistent in your point and what you feel and what you believe. And I don't believe in picking and choosing battles. I had a guy on from Gaza the other day, and I tried to explain to him that Marxism and all this imperialism, it's all linked, and injustice is all this thing that America does. He was hyper focused on defeating Zionism. He didn't want to believe that these things were interlinked. Intersectionality, the idea that the mechanisms that allow us to brutalize and be cruel to others, and the justifications and cognitive dissonance that we make, that's not related when we do it to people and do it to animals. Like, it's the same mentality, just manifested on a different agent. That's what I think.
That's all fine and good. What I will say is that make that argument. Listen, I agree with you. Be morally consistent. Make that argument to people who have the luxury of that moral consistency.
Where do you live?
Excuse me. I'm not over consuming meat. I eat exclusively from local farms where I can know what's being raised. I do not.
I'm sure the animals appreciate that.
Chris, you need to be having these conversations with your fellow white people who can afford to go be vegan. This is not something you get to go talk and say, the world needs to be vegan right now because you're all causing harm. There isn't a collective they here. There is not. So to treat it as if there is the issue that I have with it. The argument you're making isn't my problem. It's the way you are prescribing it and then backpedaling whenever we point out the way you're prescribing it to the people who are victimized by it. So this is absolutely a conversation you should be having with the people who have enough privilege to act on it, not with the people suffering from war, not with the people suffering from economic hardship right now. That is the point I think that I'm trying to make. And yeah, we can go back and forth on morality, but that is an impasse that's not connected.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is not over consuming meat. The rest of the world is not the problem.
Yeah,
when it
everybody
comes to meat
has
consumption.
their priorities and what they think is the most imminent thing to, address, and that's fine.
But how can anybody address the moral quandary of meat consumption when they are under active bombardment?
You can't. I mean, what do you
We
want?
make
What are
this
they
argument
eating?
about being queer. Like, we talk about this all the time, and we're
I
able to understand that countries under violence, under war, are not able to develop in terms of those types of progressive
why
elements
I think that
because
you
they
want
are.
you're making it seem like I want people in a war zone to fucking go vegan and
No, I'm talking
right
about
away.
hardship generally. I'm talking about the inability of the single mom providing for 3 kids to fundamentally reckon with, and I just think that this is an issue that you're asking people, because those are like the
What I
people
just
who are
don't understand,
consuming
why
meat,
is that
Chris.
such a why is it such a big deal if the beans or the plant-based food is available? Why is that such a big
You're
sacrifice?
assuming the assumption is availability. You're making that assumption.
I'm only no,
Availability,
I
excuse
specifically
me,
said
please, Chris, I'm
people who
begging you.
are no, but you're making a straw man. I'm saying
I'm not making a
for the
straw man. You
people
cut
if
me off and then you
yeah,
make the straw man,
there's no
Chris. Please let me
availability.
finish.
You said people that don't have any availability to food shouldn't be forced to do this. And I'm saying I
That's
don't
not what I said.
if it's not available to you, then that's fine. Like I'm
But
not
what I'm saying
yeah,
then
I'm
is
saying if
make
you
that
can
argument to
do
Well,
it,
people it's
let her
available
finish.
to.
Let her finish.
I'm saying if you can
Because
do
you're
it,
Let her
if you
finish.
can do it, do it. If you can't
Chris,
do
let
it,
her
that's fine
finish.
too. I don't
Chris,
care.
let her finish. Let her finish.
you have an assumption of availability. You have an assumption.
Sorry, you cut out, Angie. What did you say?
There is an assumption of mass availability that is being happened.
No, I just specifically said that that's not true. And if I said that
You
before, I take it
please
back because I was wrong. I was wrong. And I don't want to say people that aren't available, hey, this doesn't apply to you. Don't take my advice. But if you can, and it doesn't hurt you too much, consider it maybe. That's what I
This
think.
is a very, but my point, Chris, if you can please let me just hear this out. This is very different from what you have been saying for the past hour. Because for the past hour, you've been making the argument that it is fundamentally immoral, and we are making this like cognitive dissonance of morality by not addressing it. When now you like, that's my point, is that
It's just
yeah,
better. It's better when you don't have to do it. That's all. I think that it could be better. Like, let's say you have to do it. Okay, you have to do it. Then do the thing. That's fine. But if you don't have to do it, well, that's good too, right? Would it be better that is it better that an animal maybe doesn't have to die? But if he has to die, that's okay. I'm cool with that. But if he doesn't have to die, is
and
that
I
okay
think
too?
that's the only thing I'm saying is if you've gotten to this point, I think the next time that we go to make an overarching prescriptive declaration, that maybe we just consider that, because that was the issue throughout all of this.
I would never do that. I would never force anybody who couldn't do something to do something that they couldn't do. That would be mean. That's mean. And people who can't do something, why would I expect them to have the capacity or the material goods to do? That's fine. I never would actually care about that. But for the people who can do it or willing to do it, willing to try it, I think that's better. I think that's better than
Well,
killing an animal. That's all.
nothing's stopping them except for their love of meat. So,
Meat is delicious. That's one of the other things. Meat is very good. But yeah, I just think these three things, if you want to know you could look, everybody in the chat, you can look this up on your own, look up the latest nutrition, the scientific consensus. You can figure out a way to figure out what the majority of science is saying currently about the health of plant-based diets. Then you can go over and see what are the, environmental implications of animal agriculture, go down that rabbit hole, and then go off to the more obvious stuff. Go watch a bunch of videos of cows crying as they're being slaughtered, or any number of like things that I don't know, I anthropocentrize anthropomorphize everything, where I see human and I see life in animals' eyes. It's a curse, it's a blessing, and it's a curse. When I was a kid, they took me fishing, right? They took us all out to the thing and we'd go fishing in the river. And then at the end, you know, they take the fish and I go, oh, what are they doing with the fish? And they beat him on the head with a hammer. Well, I started crying my eyes out, 5 years old or something. And they cooked up the fish, put a breading on them and stuff, gave me the fish back. And I had cried for hours about being horrified by what I had just seen. And I went to the river and I threw this breaded fucking piece of fish back into the river and said, swim, fishy, swim. And everybody laughed at me as a kid. And I think that there's not enough compassion. And I think we should just always try to be compassionate because life is fucking hard. And if I have compassion for a kid starving in Africa, I'm surely going to have compassion for an animal when he's in distress. You know, it's just something who I am. I don't have personal axe to grind. Like I hate all people because they've all disappointed me so much. But at the same time, I see that all this injustice is totally related and I just don't like any of it. And so if I can do anything, so I'm doing my geopolitical analysis. I'm trying to eat vegan. I don't eat bananas. I don't drink coffee. I don't try to get stuff from the global south. I don't eat fucking pineapples. I have sacrificed so much to try to bring this to the forefront. And I was raised by an abusive mother who beat the shit out of me constantly and called me a faggot and, you know, was just a piece of shit. This person was a piece of shit. And I know what it's like to be repressed, and I'm very sensitive in my old age even. And I think that, you know, we can always do better, man. And when I was homeless, I had a dog and the dog saved me from killing myself. And I'll always respect dogs. I'll always respect animals. And I'll never be able to unsee a lot of the shit that I've seen, you know, and I'll never be okay either. But it made me feel really proud. And it was a big moment in my life when my wife finally convinced me to go vegan. And she didn't actually convince me. It was just, she had been vegan for 15 years and she would come home and I would have a big tri-tip steak boiling in the oven and the whole house would smell like meat. And at some point I realized I'm an asshole because I'm subjecting her to something that she doesn't, you know, but she was really nice about it. Oh, you know, eat your meat. It's fine, babe. And then eventually I thought I have to do something in my life, even if I have no power and no money and no fucking goals in life, or, you know, I'm just, and so I went, and then it became like a really proud moment for me that if I didn't accomplish jack shit in my life, that at least I was able to abstain from a thing that's delicious and available everywhere. And now I'm a fucking pariah and people hate me. And, you know, I was just at this festival in Berlin and I told a guy I was vegan and he's like, ew, your testosterone, that's why you look so weak and you're gay. Like, it's really not, my life isn't fucking easy, dude. And so I just try to be as good as I can. That's all. And I'm not better than anybody. If anything, I know that I'm very, very not important. This is well established. My mom made sure that I knew that from the beginning. So, and yeah, I am passionate. I'm passionate about it. So
if I can say just this one thing, everything I'm saying, it only boils down to this one thing. What you're saying, Chris, is so impactful. And like, that's the story that's going to make a difference for people. But my point is that our individual choice as consumers is not liberatory. My individual choice as a consumer to consume or not consume is not liberatory. What will be liberatory is the attack of the capitalist who holds and is selling what is being consumed. That's the point that I was trying to make. Everything that you're saying is brilliant and like should be communicated and will make a difference for people. Like, that's what's going to make people think twice.
I know this argument because all my Marxist friends tell me this all the time. But the difference between that and any basic consumption is that there is a living being on the other side of this consumption that is a little bit different than any other random grocery choice or lifestyle change. And if we can boycott McDonald's and Starbucks because Israel sucks, then we should boycott, you know, cruelty in any other fashion. Even, you know, that's all. But I've exhausted myself too, you know.
Yeah. The boycotting of like animal cruelty generally is a much easier thing to talk about than the individual choice of consumption. About
Yeah.
like literal veganism is the point I'm trying to just
All
differentiate.
I'm saying is like, do it if you can. If you can't do it, I would never say, we should force everybody to do it. But honestly, once I did, I was very skeptical. And then I did a lot of research, obviously, and dug around on the internet for a long time. And then, wrote a book with the help of my friend. And I just felt vindicated in my choice. And I thought that more people should do it, because I thought that I could never do it. And then I did it. And then all of a sudden I became healthier and happier and more like, more like I feel better about like I'm proud that I did it, but at the same time I got healthier. Like I felt fitter and I had less inflammation and I ran a lot. Like things got better for me. So watch out for the evangelical nutrition people. Like this is a big minefield, but I have to say, I got to speak my truth. I think it's all around a great thing. And I just encourage everybody to go actually check it out, because I didn't do it lackadaisically. I was scared. I was super scared. I thought I'll probably get a vitamin deficiency and die, or I'll do it wrong, but then I have nothing but regret not doing it earlier. And I feel like a fool for not doing it earlier. That's all. I'm done. I've spent all my energy. And Mira, she's even later than we are. She's even further out.
I know, it's like morning.
It's 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Wow, you're a trooper to
Early
sit through all
in the
this. Oh my!
She's about to eat her morning show.
Yeah,
Guys, eat your meat. Eat your meat. Enjoy yourself. Honestly, not if you want to know the truth, doesn't matter. It's not going to matter, because we're all toast anyway. So
Pretty much.
enjoy yourself. I see the guys in Gaza where they cook, they get the big pot and they cook all the meat and the rice and it's a big dish and stuff. I don't throw a big fucking fit about that. I'm happy for them. I know what's going on there. I'm not that kind of guy, But
Thank you, Chris. That's so sweet of you. Thanks.
Thank God.
I wouldn't. I think that
I'm teasing you. I really am just teasing you. I'm sorry.
At this point, we're just rage baiting each other. Okay, nice.
Yeah, no, but I really, and without conversations like this, I love you guys. You guys are great. You keep me going every day. Mira, Angie, especially, Adam, of course. It's hard. And even if we disagree, I really value this. So don't think that I'm all bitter or anything, because I really appreciate you guys. And we're all in this together. Like I'm here. This is my therapy weekly to dispel all the shit that we know is going on. Like it's all bad. So yeah, I don't know if it gets easier or not, but it takes a lot of drugs for me. Yeah. So what, should we end it here? Look, I want to talk to you guys off the thing here, and then we'll say goodbye to everybody. I want to see what Mira's doing. I want to know more about VPOL before we go. So you guys say something before we go. Shout out to your homies or anything.
Kumbaya,
He's got the whole world in his hands. Yeah, any shout outs to your homies or anything? Anybody?
Shout out Iran. Shout out Hezbollah. Shout out
Hezbollah. She's kidding, everyone.
She's got me fucking.
We're not kidding.
Got me demonetized. Got me kicked off YouTube. Thanks a lot. No, yeah. Viva la resistance, and we'll see you guys, I guess, next Sunday, hopefully.
Patria o muerte.
Yeah, what she said. In Salah. All right. Let me end this thing.
Yeah.